Hello everyone, and welcome to This Nintendo Life, episode 259. My name is NBZ, and I exist as a person. You ever think sometimes, Bally? My sister gets this thing, right, where she's like, oh, I don't want to think about space, it's too big, it makes me feel like small and non-existent. I'm like, I fucking love that shit. Tell me I'm an insignificant nothing in the middle of this uncaring universe. It's great. Sometimes you just sit there and you just wonder about existence, and you just kind of phase out, and you're like, wow, I'm a human being. I'm thinking this thought right now. You ever get that kind of like weird?
Do you ever think about the Roman Empire?
Yeah, I ever think about the fucking Roman Empire? Why is this coming up all of a sudden?
I don't know
it's
when
like on
that
every
started.
podcast, everyone's talking about like why men always think about the Roman Empire, and I'm like, I guess I kind of sometimes do, but like not that often. Like, I don't know. Everyone just like thinks that all we care about as dudes is like just warfare,
Yes.
and people hitting each other. Sometimes we just think about cereal, like we just think about the least interesting thing possible, and I don't know. How much do you think about the Roman Empire, Bally?
Oh, not very much. Very much.
Not really a history buff, I guess. Not really a. I mean, you do like certain.
I like my history,
kinds of
but I like
history.
modern history a lot more.
Yeah.
So let's talk like 18th century onwards is what I prefer.
Talk about.
I
I do probably prefer ancient history just because it's this nice mix of like mythology and history in a way.
That's fun. That's fun.
Which I'm more of a mythology fan, I would say, than a history fan. But I do like that stuff quite a bit. Yeah, it's good. But do I think about the Roman Empire on a daily basis? No, not really. I guess we all kind of have to think about the Roman Empire on a daily basis because they built our roads. They built all these things. They invented.
I think they built our systems of governance and things are based on the Roman Empire.
Exactly.
And all these other things. But
lots of innovation, but also, I mean, they colonized the fuck out of the world, so probably not great in lots of ways. A history of colonialism that the British Empire decided to take up after them, just to carry the flag
and go even further.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just take it even further and put us in the state of horror that we now live in today. But yes, we're not going to talk about that, Bally, because we're here to not think about the Romans or the Empire. We're here to think about and talk about video games. They're pretty remarkable. And is that something the Romans did for us? Video games? I mean, they probably did some games back then, but not the technological marvels that we have.
One day when people will be looking at our era, it'll just be the video game era, or what will the name of our era be? So then it was like the Roman Empire for that part of the world.
Man,
I don't know. I guess
I don't know. It's the fucking corporations one era, basically.
The corporations own the liberal democracies era or something.
Yeah.
Pretty depressing.
Will there be anyone to write our history, or we'll all be just fucking gone? Who knows? But what I do know, Bally, is that we have a podcast right here and right now to do. So can you tell everybody what's going on this show today?
For the first segment, we're going to talk about the games that we have been playing. And for the second segment, we are going to go through some listener emails.
Yeah, it's been a little while since we dipped into the bucket, and obviously we'd like to get some more emails as well. But yeah, we'll go through some of those, and then we'll ask for more because we are voracious when it comes to that stuff. But Bally, let's kick things off with the thing everybody wants to hear about that isn't out yet, but will be out by the time this podcast releases. So Super Mario Brothers Wunder releases soon, and will be out by the time, of course, you are hearing this. But we have not played it yet, except I have technically played it because I went over the weekend, Bally, to EGX, the Eurogamer Expo here in London, and I got a chance to get my hands on Super Mario Brothers Wunder for a little bit of time. So what we're going to do on this show is I'm going to talk about it from my EGX impressions. I'm then going to record a solo segment because Bally's basically coming down to London, won't be available, so we're recording early.
Weather permitting.
Yeah, oh yeah. If everything goes to plan, then Bally will be coming down, and then instead of us both talking about it, I'm going to do a bonus kind of chat about Mario Wunder that will stick right after this. It'll make sense when you're listening to it.
That'll be like you'll record it at the end of the weekend.
I'll basically spend the whole weekend playing Mario Wunder, and then I'll give my thoughts that can go on the show. And then next...
So you will have beaten it for sure.
Probably. But next episode, we'll get Bally's thoughts on Mario Wunder. So, right. And I'll chat, we'll both chat all the way through it.
Yes.
For that. So that's the plan for Mario Wunder. But Bally, I did get to play it. I did get to get my hands on sticks at EGX, and I think things are looking pretty good for this game so far. I think it's very well known, if you listen to this podcast for any amount of time, that we like Mario in his 2D form, but it's not really our favorite thing, right? I think the era of the new Super Mario Brothers games being the era in which this podcast has taken place in, it's probably not the best era for 2D Mario, to be fair.
And we love 2D platformers. We should also make that clear.
Yes, exactly. But we're also we're not the sickos who tell everyone that Mario 3 is the best game ever made. I in fact think Mario 3 is not very good. Don't tell anyone that. I don't think it's great. But yeah, we're not that big into kind of classic 2D Mario in that way either. So it takes quite a special thing, I think, to knock our socks off or for us to be impressed. I think the thing that Wunder kind of has in spades is that sense of, they may be taking some new directions here, and they're maybe kind of freshening up an experience that has felt so stale and kind of lifeless for a long time. A lot of that comes down to animation quality, and I can say having played it, that comes through quite strongly, right? Just the movement of Mario, the little flourishes to his animation, the whole going through a pipe and him grabbing his hat and his hat disappearing and all that sort of stuff, poking out the other side, the way he just jumps on enemies, the way you kind of move and walk, it feels like there's so much personality that's been injected, and it doesn't. I think the worry sometimes with over animating characters is that it takes away from the feel, and that is further from the truth than it could possibly be, because the feel still feels excellent in Mario Wonder. Running around, jumping, all that stuff, it feels good. It feels modern in a way that we like, and it feels like it's open to potential high-level challenges, and you won't get frustrated by it. To me, it felt actually a little less slippy than Mario's traditionally felt, which has always been a bit of my issue with him.
Did it feel slicker than Mario Maker?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's probably around that level, maybe a bit better, because in some ways Mario Maker is still adhering to a version of Mario from the past, right?
Yeah.
And none of those versions of him feel exactly the way they do in their base game. The Mario 3 art style feels much better in Mario Maker than it ever did on the Super Nintendo, from my perspective anyway.
NES, you mean?
Sorry, yes, NES. I think Mario 3 is one of those games that is really impressive visually, so it always makes me think it's a Super Nintendo game when no, it's exactly. The late era NES game. But yeah, and it's the same with Mario World. I do think that the styles of Mario Maker all do kind of physics-wise feel the same, right? They're all kind of built on the new Super Mario Brothers feel.
Yeah.
And I would say, I had 15 minutes hands-on, right? Having only had that amount of time, it still did feel better than the new Super Mario Brothers kind of version of the physics to me.
You said that the game seems like it's designed for high level play. I remember distinctly in New Super Mario Bros. U, so the final one, you had the ability to kind of do a little air twirl, and that kind of air twirl would just allow you to hang in the air just that little bit longer. So for high level play, you could do some extra long jumps. I think they even brought it back into Mario Maker, to be honest, because I'd constantly remember making little jumps you could only reach when you did the air twirl kind of thing.
Yes, and that was only in the new Super Mario Brothers art style in Mario Maker.
Right.
They didn't allow it in the other styles.
Yeah. So did they have any moves like that in Wonder that can help with high level play?
Yes, so that returns. You can still do that little twirl, and here's the kicker. Now, here's the thing that made my experience amazing, but also ruined my experience at the same time. So, Bally, this game has this badge system, right? And this badge system allows you to do these new things. One of them is a cap that you can float down to the ground. There's a grapple hook we've seen. There's a bunch of different ones. There is one, however, that is my kryptonite. There is one that lets you wall jump, and the way this works is actually really fun because you kind of get dumped in the overworld. I basically was kind of speed running this demo to get as much content out of it as I possibly could within a short period of time. So I played.
It was timed to 15 minutes.
Yes, timed. So it doesn't matter where you go. You can just try and get as far as you can within 15 minutes, and then it will just cut you off no matter where you are. So I played through the first opening levels. Was good fun. Played as Elephant Mario. Elephant Mario is really good fun actually. He's very very big and bulky, but still has that feel of control that you want from a Mario character. It's kind of weird. He feels heavy and big, but also nimble, which is a bit strange. But I think it's nice that that's the case, and that the set of animations for him is you can whack his nose about. You can also do the water thing where you spray water, and you can duck down and use a kind of sweep with his nose as well. So it's a kind of down attack, which is fun. So yeah, there's a lot of that stuff going on. But then it kind of dumps you out into an overworld, and in the overworld, I was like, okay, let's go to these weird levels and see what I can find. And so there's actually a little bit of variation in terms of the types of levels. Similar, I would say, to was it Kirby that did this, where in Kirby's Forgotten Land you had this kind of those challenge levels, right, where it'd be like, okay, you play this much shorter little level that is based around one of the abilities and stuff like that. So these badges have these challenge levels where you get the badge.
That's very Kirby Forgotten Land.
Yes,
actually.
yes.
Exactly.
So you get the badge at the beginning, and it teaches you how to use the badge through that challenge level. And so the one that I went straight to was the wall jump one. And it is basically like a single Super Meat Boy wall jump. So, in Meat Boy, it basically lets you climb up the same wall repeatedly. This is what if you just had one of those, but it lets you just hang onto the side of a thing and then get up above. And the tech here is that you can use the wall jump on the side, and then after that you can use the twirl. So it's wall jump into twirl that gives you that like slight variation, that kind of subtlety of movement that is kind of what I'm looking for out of a game like this, where the hardcore challenges, you want to be those really like single block things where you're doing a wall jump twirling to get on top of it. Feels really satisfying, and the wall jump feels great.
You can use that on any level.
Exactly, yeah. So as soon as you have the badge, you can use that badge as much as you want, whatever level you want to.
So
now, there'll clearly be levels designed around other badges, right? Like, they'll clearly be indicating you should do this level with this new badge because it's built, the level's kind of built around it. But I don't think that precludes you. You can just ignore their advice and just go with whatever you want. The problem is like, I want to try other badges, right? As soon as I took the wall jump badge away, I was trying to wall jump for everything and I couldn't anymore. It's like, oh, fuck. I kind of wish they just added that as a base ability to Mario, and that's the kind of curse of this, where I'm like, man, this is great, but what if he could always do that, and then I had another badge as well, right? I almost wish they'd gone a little further with it and rethought it from the sense of, what if we just let Mario have this one wall jump for every single level? Like, I think it opens up a lot of possibilities. And I think the nice thing about that level is it was easy. And I think the game, from what we've heard from reviews and stuff, sounds like it's relatively, breezy and not too challenging. But like the end of that level, I was like, oh, there are these coins up on the top. And like, how we are with coins in Mario. I don't think they matter at all. They're just a means to an end or a way to incentivize you.
And it does still have the live system that I imagine you get 100 coins per live kind of thing, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't actually pay attention to any of the live stuff. I didn't die, so I was fine with that. But
MLG Pro over here.
Well, yeah, it's the beginning of the game. It's the beginning of a Mario game, so it's going to be pretty hard to die. But I saw a bunch of coins on a wall and then a higher platform. I was like, I'm just going to try and do this a couple of times. And it took me a couple of times to do it, but I got that wall jump into twist into on top of the platform and got the coins. I don't really care about the coins. I cared more that I achieved the challenge of the platforming, which was fun to pull off, right?
Yeah.
So if my hope is that, these challenges are a kind of preview to what the later game will do, where I hope they have like, okay, you did the tutorial challenge, here's a medium challenge, here's a really hardcore wall jump challenge. Like, that's what I really love to see, is taking that to the next level and making it so that you can like really dive in on some of those badge abilities and what you can really pull off with them. And it feels like at least this system with its flexibility is going to lead to a lot of interesting play from like the high level people with Mario Wonder. So that's very cool. The other type of level they had was a very short, almost like a mushroom house thing from like Mario 3, where you go into it, and the one I had was a bunch of piranha plants with music blocks, and I just bonked them from underneath with the music blocks 5 times, and they all died, and then I just got something for it. I think I got a power-up or something. And yeah, the other thing that you can do is within a level, you can change your ability, but you always keep your previous one. So, in I think it's Mario 3D World, where you can pop one out, but then it disappears when you use it. It doesn't actually. I think in Bowser's Fury they did the thing where it goes back into your inventory, so you can swap between them basically. This does the same thing. So if you have an elephant one saved up, you can pop it out, use it, and then you can switch back to another one basically if you want to. And it's just about holding down the button, and it will pop out of Mario, and then you can just use it. I actually played as Luigi the whole time. It was funny because one of the opening badges that you get is Luigi's flutter kick. So I was like, great, I'll play as Luigi and give him the first badge, which is the flutter kick. Which gives you a bit more of
so the flutter kick becomes a badge, but
yes.
all the characters play the same, like they said
exactly
in the direct, right?
So Peach, you could give Peach the flutter kick, and suddenly she's Peach Luigi essentially, which is cool. So yeah, I think the badge is going to open up for a lot of possibility, but in some ways I kind of wanted a bit of a Metroid out of this, where it's like, you got the wall jump, now you keep the wall jump for the rest of the game. Would have been nice, but I'm very hopeful. The levels I played so far, I mean, they're the ones we've seen, basically the opening kind of level, so I knew what to expect from like the first level where all the pipes go crazy and stuff. And there was one level I did where it's those kind of thwomp blocks going down. The wonder power for that was it's just a giant thwomp going down on you, and you have to use the drill ability. So I did use the drill as well in one of the levels. You have to use the drill ability to drill through the floor in order to escape this thing that is falling down on you constantly, basically. So it's a bit of a race against time, which is quite nice. So yeah, from what I've heard anyway from reviews, it sounds like things go pretty crazy with the variety and what's going on. So very excited to check it out. But yeah, had just a brief 15 minutes with it, tried to get as much coverage of it as I could within that 15 minutes. But yeah, it was great fun, and I think it spells hopefully good news, which I'm sure you'll hear about right now, because we're going to transition into me talking about it in the future. Here we go. I come to you now from the future to talk to you more about Super Mario Brothers Wonder. So I've been playing it all weekend. I'm kind of bouncing between Spider-Man and it, so I've not put as much time as I might have done if it was just Mario Wonder coming out. But I'm a good 6-7 hours into this game, and I am currently in World 5. That doesn't mean that I have gone all the way through to World 5, however, because at the back half of the game, they're like, hey, choose which one you want to do next. And so I haven't done World 4 yet, and I haven't done World 6. I'm just kind of like, I'm just going to go for the middle one and see what happens here. So that's kind of where I am in terms of completion. I have also, up to this point, 100%ed every level that I can currently play, which means everything in World 1 through 3 I've done every single thing for, and I've done a bunch of special stuff as well. So that said, I think it is probably clear from our attitude on this podcast and what I've said so far about this game, this is the best 2D Mario game that's ever been made, and I don't really think it's even a contest, if I'm honest. Like, I have liked games like this in the past. I enjoyed Super Mario World a great deal, and there's a lot of Super Mario World DNA in Wonder, from a kind of structural perspective, but also some of the things that it does. I think it has a lot of DNA kind of shared with that game. But ultimately, it feels like this is taking the best elements of 3D Mario, by which I mean the surprise and the delight and the weirdness and the freshness from those games, alongside some of the design ethos from Mario Maker when it came to what communities were doing with Mario as a format, like I think about puzzle levels where people would hide 5 red coins, right? Or those key coins, right? And you'd have to find those to get the key that would open a door that then you'd get somewhere. There are levels in this game that are, hey, this is just kind of a small box of an area with you just have to figure it out. Just like find stuff that is hidden, and once you find the 5 things, you get the Wonder Seed, and that's the end of it. Like it is really fascinating to see the influence that a community-made game like Mario Maker has had on the design of this brand new 2D Mario. Not to mention that a lot of these kind of bite-sized levels that happen in between the main levels also feel like they're taking influence from other more kind of modern platformers, right? Like, I think the thing that I always called out is like, look, this game's never going to be like Meat Boy or Celeste. And yet here I find myself with levels like the wall kick challenge, or at least the second one that I did, that is straight up a Celeste Meat Boy style room where you are ascending higher and higher into the sky and using your platforming chops to get there with increasingly difficult challenges, but in a more bite-sized fashion, in a way that isn't going through your traditional Mario level, a more of a vertical approach to it. And I have absolutely loved that. I think it gives such a freshness, a diversity to the types of levels, to the types of platforming that you're engaging with. It really feels like they have brought a lot of those influences in, even if maybe Nintendo's designers haven't played those games. Like, I wonder though if that happens a bit more these days, right? We always used to hear that Nintendo, they never listened to anybody, they didn't know what PlayStation Network was, like, they don't understand the internet, all this sort of stuff. But like when Anumo was talking about Breath of the Wild, they were like, oh yeah, a bunch of people play Skyrim on the team and stuff like that. So I do wonder, like, clearly people have been looking at Mario Maker and what the community have been doing with it. But I do wonder if some of these younger designers on a team like this have played games like Celeste, right? And are thinking about the ways in which it approaches its design and the way in which it is very bite-sized challenge-led, where it's like, you can probably do this entire room in 5 seconds. It just takes extreme precision and skill in order to get across it, right? And nothing in this game is kind of up to that level, I would say, but they are really, beckoning towards it. I think that's been super surprising and really fun so far. From a kind of structural standpoint with Super Mario World, I think the thing I really like about it is that it is taking levels and saying, okay, these levels are actually pretty short, but some of them will have secret exits, right, that take you somewhere else. And some of them, I mean, they all have this kind of unique feel to them. Every level feels like it has its own identity, its own thing that it's trying to do, right? Whether it be introducing a brand new enemy type, right? There's the ice world I was in, or a nice level I was in, where this enemy, this little guy, and he's just kicking ice blocks, right? And so these ice blocks get kicked at you, and these ice blocks can be broken by body slamming down on them, or ground pounding, I should say, and they also push you off the edge, and these guys are just kicking stuff about, right? And so those are kind of the core enemies for that level, and you learn, how to deal with them, what's going on. And then I had this one moment where I kicked a shell, I kicked a turtle shell at them, a Koopa shell, I should say, and these guys, as you would expect, usually you kick a Koopa shell at an enemy and just kills them, right? Because that's how it works. These guys, because their entire ethos is kicking stuff as well, they fucking stop it like a football and kick it back at Mario, and I don't expect that, and then I don't die, but I get knocked down from Super Mario to regular size. And that was just a delightful surprise, right? I think that's the wonderful thing about this game, is that by eschewing the kind of traditionalist stance, the traditionalist approach that the new Super Mario Brothers series fell into, where they're like, we're just going to use the same enemies, we're just going to use the same looking stages, everything's going to be the same, the music is repetitive and nihilistic. Like, there's a kind of end of my tether that I got to with that series, where it just felt like there is zero creativity here, there's zero interest. And part of that is, like, there's lack of surprise in what your expectations are, because you know what every enemy does. You've seen them 20 times before. There's nothing new or interesting or different about them. And multiple times already, there have been new enemies introduced within a space, and I'm instantly surprised by them and delighted, and now have learned something fresh, and then have to apply that when I come across them next time, right? So I think that has been a real interesting thing. And I guess jumping off the Mario World comparison again is to say that, there is also a special world in this game, which was such a core element of Super Mario World. And I think, honestly, some of the kind of crazy levels at the end of that game had kind of Meat Boy Celeste style vision to them, but they were obviously in a time where, you had to play it all the way through with lives, and you would die and have to reset and get a bunch more, and that sort of stuff. But when I played Super Mario World, I played it through I think it was the Wii U on my gamepad, and I obviously had save states active, right, which allowed me to play it in a way similar to what you would do with one of those games where dying doesn't matter, you just reset at the beginning and you just go through it again. And one of the nice things, I guess, about Wunder so far is that it does have this kind of star system, this difficulty star system, which indicates to you, is this going to be a big challenge or not? Is it 2 stars? Is it kind of breezy? Is it going to be 5 stars and very challenging? And you get to the special world stages, and they're all 5 stars. I've only done a couple of them so far. I've unlocked a third one, but I haven't quite gotten to it. But those are the types of challenges where, they are designed for you to really learn them by playing them multiple times, right? So, you're going to die a bunch, you're going to get to a point, you're going to die again, but then you're going to learn, and you're going to go back in, and you're going to have a good time kind of figuring out what you were actually supposed to be doing there. I think there's a real smartness to the types of challenges they give you there, and there's kind of a balance as well, because there's this balance that they have between, you have purple coins to collect, and the purple coins make things even more challenging in their own right. But then there is this other element of, okay, we're just going to make things much harder overall, because we're going to give you a specific challenge. So the one that I really enjoyed is called Fluff Puff Peak Special Climb to the Beat. And this also has a bit of the Galaxy influence in it, because it's taking an idea from those games, which is those blocks that appear on the beat, right? They appear and disappear. But this one's slightly different, because it's more about, you have these cut-out lines of blocks that don't exist yet, but they will start appearing on the beat as well. So you are running over these blocks, they're appearing, and then you are using them to wall jump up places, but your timing has to be on point. There is almost a Rayman Legends, I guess Rayman Legends was one that had the music levels, right? It's almost a Rayman Legends approach here, where the rhythm of the action is dictating the pace of your platforming, and as such you are kind of rhythmically listening to the music while also using that with your platforming to enhance yourself, to get yourself there. And this level just goes places in terms of its difficulty, right? Where it starts off and you're just running along, and it's like, oh, do a wall jump onto another platform. Then it's like, oh, a couple of wall jumps. Then it's like, oh, we're only going to have 2 blocks for these wall jumps. And by the end, you are doing single block wall jumps for like 5 in a row to get to the top of this level, to get to the very end of it. And I fucking loved it. It was so perfect. It was that type of challenge, that kind of thing that I'm looking for from this game, where, you know, you are honed in with a challenging thing, and it is using all the tools you have available to you, which is fantastic. And I guess jumping off that point, right, because tools available to you is a very interesting thing in this game, because they give you this whole new system, this badge system, right? And the badge system allows you to take these different kind of enhancements and decide which one do you want to apply for what level, how much you want to use it, what do you want to use in particular. And so I think I should make, not a correction, but like what I was talking about previously with the demo that I played was, I like the wall kick ability, right? Which basically gives you a, you know, you kick yourself higher on the same wall, you don't move away from it like the traditional wall jump. Traditional wall jump still exists. The kick ability is somewhat different in that it gives you that little boost on top of that wall, and then you can jump back over with a wall jump. So you can actually combine these two to do wall kick into wall jump, which is a really nice combo and has definitely been used multiple times in the game for certain purple coins or challenges or things like that. And so that one I thought I would be using more, but then I realized, oh no, I do have a regular wall jump all the time, so I probably won't use it as much. But there are a few really useful ones. So one of them is, it will just give you a mushroom when you start a level. So if you're finding a level particularly challenging and you're doing it a bunch of times and you just want to quickly get started and don't want to try and find a mushroom, you can just kick off and be a Super Mario straight from the beginning and just get going from that point. And that is a real boon in some senses, because it means it like cuts out a lot of time. There's one level in particular I was doing. This is another of the really hard ones. It's the bouncing hippos, where there are a bunch of hippos. There's the 2 big hippos bouncing on these spikes along the ground, and the spikes have a bunch of holes in them, so you can just fall to your death, or you can fall on spikes, and you have to use the bounce of the hippo to kind of bounce your way through. There are platforms that will fall if you stay on them for too long. It's just it's a short bite-sized level, but it is just a condensed challenge in a short period of time. And every time I was playing that level, I was like, look, I'm just going to start with the mushroom, because the mushroom means that if I can take a hit by potentially hitting a spike accidentally, or I can take a hit by messing something up, and that will allow me to get back on my feet and not have to have that kind of one-hit death thing constantly if I'm keeping on resetting the level. So the mushroom one has been helpful in certain scenarios. The one that I've actually been going to the most is the flutter jump. So it's the kind of the Luigi kick, right, from Mario 2, where Luigi's ability in that game is he can do a bit of a high kick and get a little bit higher, get a bit more air, a little bit extra height, essentially. And that one is just nice for fine adjustment. The combination of that plus the spin in the air, the kind of like rotational spin that you do to adjust, just gives you a level of control, I would say, over your character that allows for some really cool stuff, and in some cases allows you to kind of bypass certain elements of levels or get to places in a way that you shouldn't necessarily be able to. I mean, you are, because the game allows it, but you're able to get there without having to use specific things, right? If you were supposed to find a hidden block to get up somewhere, you might be able to get up there without having found that, because you have the flutter kick equipped, stuff like that. And so that's my kind of default one that I go with a lot of the time. I have switched up my default one a bit, because I am kind of 100%ing this game. There's one that you get later that is a sensor badge that basically pings when you're nearby a coin or by a Wunder flower, and I think that stuff has been super helpful in terms of just helping me find things, because there have definitely times in this game, like challenging things, where I'm like, where the hell is this purple coin? And it feels like the designers super understand that kind of joy of hidden stuff, right? Where it's never super obvious when something is hidden. You have to really think about it laterally in terms of the rules of the level and what has been shown to you. And it never feels random either. It always feels like there's some kind of clever twist to it, some smart thing that you have to have realized in order to find them. But there's definitely been at least 4 or 5 times where I've been like, where is this fucking coin? And I've gone to YouTube to find it. And every time I'm like, right, that makes sense. But I just wasn't looking at it in the right way. And I think that is really important, right? Because part of the challenge here is finding a balance between a platformer that is approachable for everybody and a platformer that is challenging for the veterans. And something that, Nintendo tend to be quite good at in recent years is finding that balance, because they almost approach 100%ing Mario games like, this is the real game for people who have played these games before, versus if you're a kid and you're playing it, just play through the game and finish it, and that'll be the thing, right? You'll be good there, and that'll be good. And it feels like the other influence here is that kind of collectability. Like, I 100%ed 3D Land, right? 3D Land is one of those games where I'm like, every flagpole, every coin, everything, right? Every character, doing it back and forth as Mario and Luigi, right? Just making sure every single level was done to the pinnacle. And 3D Land, I say, also shares DNA with Wunder in its kind of bite-sized level approach. Its levels are never too long. They feel like easy enough to approach. And the nice thing about both games as well is that Wunder, the levels are short enough to where if you do miss a coin, or if you do take a different path, you can jump back in and you can very quickly run to where you were, ignoring enemies, doing all that stuff. Like, first time through a level, obviously engage with all of it, feel it, understand it, but then take a little bit longer to, or to take a shorter time to get back to where you were previously on a subsequent run through. And that makes it feel much more approachable. Now, I'd say the one thing that I would love to see implemented here that isn't quite would be a thing where if you do collect a purple coin, just press exit the level and you still keep it. At the current moment, what they still decide is you still have to finish the level in order to keep those coins. Now, the good thing about it, though, and the opposite of that, is you still keep your coin collected even if you die. So if you jump off a pit to your death, but you collect the purple coin as you are dying, that purple coin still counts as long as you are still playing the level. So as long as you still have lives, as long as you keep going, you'll still have that counted. If you exit the level, then you'll have to do it again and recollect it. But you have to finish the level to kind of bank everything in, essentially. And I guess in some ways that creates a little bit of a pressure right at the end, because one of the things that you need to 100% every level is to get to the top of the flagpole. And I've been surprised by like how many different ways they have found to make it interesting to get to the top of the flagpole. Like things that, throughout the level have been building up, or interesting new mechanics, or things like that that have made it so, you have to think about. There was one the other day, or sorry, maybe yesterday, where there were 3 kind of pipes on the ground, and none of them were raised or anything. And I was like, there's no way, how the hell do I hit the top of this flagpole? I kept looking around the level, and there is this square that is not filled out on the corner of a piece of wall. There's like a wall going vertically down, and then they go to the left horizontally, right? But there's this little cutout that looks like a one block could be there. And so I jump, and sure enough, it's a hidden block that then pops out and raises all the pipes up to create the platform in order to give me the height to get to the top. So a lot of little stuff like that I think is really good. And even if you miss the flagpole, it does not take long to just run all the way through a level and get to the end again. I'd say the one thing that contradicts that is there are certain levels that are paced by the level itself. So for example, the airships, so there are kind of Bowser airships in the game, and those airships do the traditional Mario 3 thing of just scrolling at their own pace, and so you cannot go faster than it goes. There's another really good level that I did, which was you're on a moving platform all the way through the level, and this new enemy they've introduced, these enemies, the hoppity hops or whatever they're called, they showed them in a Nintendo Direct, where you jump and they jump at the same time. But this flips it on its head, because these guys are hidden inside the platform you're riding on, so when you jump, they move out horizontally, so they push out like a bit of a bullet and then come back into your thing, but you have to time it correctly, because if your platform is moving down and you jump, they will move out, your platform will keep moving, and they will come back the other way like a boomerang, and they'll miss the gap to get back into the platform, and they'll disappear, and then you lose your kind of projectile for the rest of the level. So it's this fun balance of making sure you don't jump when the platform is moving downwards, and they'll throw Goombas in the way of you to force you to do that, and you have to keep this guy inside of your thing for multiple options. Like, a way that you collect purple coins in this level is jumping to make him hit another enemy. That enemy kind of spins away, hits a purple coin, which is surrounded by spikes that you couldn't have gotten otherwise, and that's the only way to get it, right? So I think that the variety on display here is really remarkable. And yeah, that I guess that is that thing, right? There's a little bit of drawback to going back and replaying stuff, but I think it's so much fun and so engaging to do so that I really have not been worried about it at all. And there's very few occasions, I would say, where they kind of do that forced scrolling thing. So yeah, again, I'm going all over the place here a little bit, but I wanted to get back to the badges a little bit because some of the things that they do really reframe some types of Mario levels. So for example, there is a dolphin kick badge, which basically allows you underwater to tap the R button and to basically swim at a regular kind of like a more manageable pace. Instead of, so Mario always traditionally just press A and he goes up and down. It's very bobby up and down. It's just a little bit. It's not great. Like underwater levels have always been a bit of a bane in Mario games generally, and they're interesting and they're fun. The music's good, but they're just a little bit different, right? They're essentially like, I mean, Flappy Bird was what you would do if you took those mechanics and did it in a different way, right? It's basically just tapping the A button to keep your momentum up and down. But this badge essentially gives you freedom of movement underwater that makes it, in a lot of ways, kind of feel like Donkey Kong, right? Like there's a rapidity to the pace of it where Mario is just diving through, cutting through the air, the water, and just moving at a speed and an agility that feels like you have a lot more freedom to move, which is really fantastic. And I think that is just a quality of life thing that has helped me engage with and like water levels a lot more in this game than anything else. I guess the thing is, like, you do have to make sure you're wearing that badge when you do it, because if you go into there and you're like, you know, I would really like to have a super mushroom at the start of this, or something like that, you know, you have to, there's always sacrifices, right? And I think that's the interesting thing about the badge system is you always have to sacrifice something to get something else. And so, yeah, I like that this kind of dolphin badge exists because it allows you freedom and allows you just an ability underwater that you wouldn't have had otherwise, a speed and a swiftness and just a momentum, which is always welcome, and it has made me enjoy them and actually engage with them and want to play more of them, which is good. And again, they kind of build challenges around that. Like every badge that you have has a challenge level associated with it, where they teach it to you, and then later another one where it's like, all right, this is the hardcore challenge now, and this is the one where we're really going to test your skill on it and make sure you understand it and you know it. And it's great. Like I honestly relish it so much that I wish that there was more in some senses. Like it feels like they have that one tutorial one and then they have a hardcore challenge. I wish there was a bit more of a build up where you'd have a few of those for each one. But I guess there's lots of different badges, lots of different things they're trying to throw at you. So I appreciate that. And I still have quite a few more left to collect that I don't have yet. So yeah, there's a lot more to dig into in terms of the badge stuff and understanding what else there is. Some weird ideas in there. One of them is basically taking the idea of coyote time to the next level, where you have this badge that lets you run extremely fast, and it means that when you run off an edge, you still keep running, literally like a coyote, and then you can jump like, I don't know, a couple of meters after that. So you can keep running, you start dipping, and then you can jump again, and it just allows you to make moves in a way that is really fascinating and makes me super interested to see what speedruns of this game will look like, because I imagine they will use that badge a lot because it's a badge that makes you go incredibly quick, which I think will be very fun. So I guess kind of getting down to the core new elements here, right? The new power-ups, there are a few of them, and it feels like that, you know, we kind of know all of them. They kind of talked about them all. I'd be surprised if there's another one hiding somewhere. But it's basically you have your regular fire flower and then 3 new ones. So there's the elephant ability, there's the bubble, and there's the drill. And each of them are interesting. I would say the one that I have used the least from its intended purpose is probably the bubble. The bubble is cool from a perspective of you can throw it at enemies and it will kill them and bubble them. But then you can also use it as a platform in and of itself, and I haven't found myself having to use that so much yet. I hope that there's a few more challenges that require the use of the bubble and creating your own platforms, because I think that would be a really cool thing. Again, going back to speedrun stuff, I have seen some very interesting tech where people combine the super fast run badge with the bubble to just eviscerate levels, where they're running through air and dropping bubbles to create more platforms for them to run on, like just kind of crazy stuff like that, which I think is very, very interesting. But from a kind of more casual perspective, I haven't found myself using the bubble as much. Elephant, I think, is great. I really like the elephant. I think it's just a big, lumbering, fun guy, and just has so many little quirks to it, you know, like the water picking up, the ability to do that duck with your trunk attack. I think just the big hitbox is interesting, because it doesn't mean you're a little less mobile, but the ability to just smack enemies about, right? Like there are certain enemies that hang from the ceiling, and part of the way you defeat them is that you jump and you grab these little ropes that are hanging down from them, and you pull the rope and it destroys the enemy as regular Mario. As Elephant, though, you can just go up to where they're hanging off the ceiling and just use your trunk and they're dead, right? It adds almost a weird melee attack to Mario. Like, it's what if Mario could punch, basically, as the Elephant, which I think is a really neat idea, and I think has added some different kind of approachability to the game. And I think that it's cool because there are certain sections, right, where you'll see there are some vertical blocks, and Mario can't break vertical blocks because he can't ground pound to the side, but the elephant's trunk can just smash right through them. So there's an interesting back and forth there, and there's definitely levels where they will feed you a power-up knowing that you should be using it in that level. There's also levels where I'm like, well, I don't have any ability to get the elephant here, but it really feels like it'd be good for me to come back, go get an elephant power-up, come back to this level and bring it here because it would make this certain challenge easier, or it would allow me to do this if I fuck up, right? Which I think is very good, and I think it just adds a lot of charm to the game. There are so many small details. I kept taking screenshots or like little videos and posting them to Twitter of like, here are these little tiny things that are just so... It's this clarity of just design and just polish that Nintendo often has in their games, but that you see far more pronounced in their bigger titles, right? Like, Tears of the Kingdom has so many minute, interesting, amazing details, and Odyssey was one of those as well. I remember, actually, it's a funny thing that I'm doing this solo again, because one of the previous times I've done a solo talk was Mario Odyssey, and one of the tiny little details that Mario Odyssey had was Mario would run into a cactus in the desert, and the little cactus needles would get stuck in his nose, right? Like, that level of attention, and it feels like they are carrying so much of that into this game as well, where you change into Elephant Mario, and I only noticed this in one of the snow levels, partially because the music in the level was so kind of chill and calm and very light, and you change into Elephant Mario, and I noticed the brass suddenly coming into the music, and I'm like, oh shit, the music adaptively changes when you become Elephant Mario to become very trumpety, kind of trunk-like, kind of heavier and bassier and beefier, and that is such a minor detail, but it does help in selling that idea that you're this bigger, heftier character, you're different, but you're still moving through the same space, and so the idea behind the music remains, but these elements get weaved into it. Anytime music can do storytelling in that way, or just mechanically work, I think is just brilliant, and the fact that that's there, and it just took me so long to just notice it, I thought was fantastic. One of the first little details I noticed was at the very first level, you play as Elephant Mario, of course, and you can get water in your trunk. I finished the level with water in my trunk, and at the end of the stage, Elephant Mario sprays the water onto the little flower guy, and it sprouts his flower out of his head. It buds and it grows, and I was like, wow, does that happen every time? And I realized, no, it only was because in that specific circumstance, I had water in my trunk at the end of the level, and that interaction happens, which means that, a designer had to sit there and think, okay, what if this person gets to the end of the level, they still have water, we have to have a custom animation just for that moment. And, I think that says a lot about Nintendo's freedom in terms of how long they can take to make a game, People have been saying, I think the interviews have been out there of like, yeah, we just had as much time as we needed to make this game. And you see it, you feel it, right? You feel the ideas, the just kind of the madcap things that are going on, the weird new enemies. Like, there was I haven't even talked about the fucking Wonder Flowers yet, but there was a Wonder Flower effect that was just a fucking quiz show, Like, it's doing that thing that, like, my favorite games do, where they have these strange, weird things, and they just throw them out there, and they're like, here's just a one-off idea, we'll never do it again, right? And that's a traditional Mario thing, mainly in the 3D space, really. Like, I think a lot of people start talking about this idea around the Galaxy 2 era, where Galaxy 2 was just relentless. Every level was different, everything was different, and they just threw out ideas, threw them away. And yeah, there are definitely elements that can return in terms of wonder effects, but they always have a twist to them, right? There's always something slightly different. And of course, in the trailers, you've seen that Mario can turn into different stuff. Like, he turns into a giant rolling spiked ball. And that, again, there's more Odyssey kind of 3D game level design ideas in here, where Mario just, sometimes with Wonder Flowers, he just turns into enemies, right? And he just becomes other enemies, and you can play as them, and they mechanically feel so different and interesting and nuanced. And like, there are certain enemies in here where I'm playing as them, I'm like, I would take a whole game just with this enemy. And I think that is the sign of a great thing, where you know, you have these ideas that are so brilliant on their own terms that an indie developer could go and make one, right? I mean, there's the opposite of this, where one of the Wonder Flower effects that they showed off in one of the trailers as well is this kind of top-down, where Mario suddenly is, you know, the camera shifts and Mario is walking around and you're looking at him like it's bloody Link's Awakening, walking around the world on top of his head. And that's kind of like an idea from the game 2D and Top D that I talked about on the show a little while ago, where you can switch between being a character who's in a side-scrolling affair and a character who is top-down walking around a world. And again, it's one idea that's been thrown out once in this entire game. It's never come back. At least I've not seen it again since. Maybe it does in some kind of more nuanced, more complex way that I think would be very cool. But yeah, I think that's the thing that really gets me about this game, is that in and of themselves, each level is so unique and different and memorable. And you come out of it and you're like, oh, right, that's the one where I rode on the bulls to the finish. Or, you know, that's the one where I was, you know, fighting against those ice guys who were throwing the blocks at me. Or that's the one with the airship that, you know, was the first airship that I did, and it had all those weird things flying about and I had to move along with it. Like, every level has something to recall from it, some new enemy, some new idea, some new thing. And then on top of that, right, on top of that, there is the Wonder Flower effect, where you get the Wonder Flower or the Wonder Seed, I should say seed, I keep saying flower. The Wonder Seeds that will eventually flower and bloom, of course. But the Wonder Seed effects are always just unique and weird and interesting and trippy, and just they either have a sense of momentum to them because of the time constraint on them, or just a sense of like, what is even happening here? I have to figure out, have I turned into this other thing? What do I do? How do I even move? Like, all that sort of stuff is there. There's a freshness, there's a injection of creativity, and it just takes it to the next level. Like, already I think this game would have been great had there not been any Wonder Seeds. You know, it would have already been leagues above what the new Super Mario Bros. Series was doing. But with the Wonder Seeds, it just takes it and just like cranks it to another level, right? And you can see this from the very beginning of the game. I mean, one of the first levels that you play is this Piranha Plant level, where you get to the Wonder Seed, and all of a sudden, there's a fucking text at the bottom of the screen. It's like, now musical number is coming. It's the Piranha Plant on parade. And the Piranha Plants pop out the pipes and just fucking start singing like it's a musical. And you're walking along and there are lights and it is just like choreographed. They're singing, they're marching. There's a level of character and just fun to these guys. They're just bopping about. Amazing. Just like a great statement from the very beginning of like, look, you thought you knew what Mario was? We're here to tell you that it isn't. We're here to tell you that this is something different. We're trying some bold ideas. We're doing some weird stuff. And and it's absolutely working for me. It's working on a level higher than any 2D Mario I have played thus far. And I think it does really come down to what fundamentally I like about Mario as a franchise, which is give me something weird, crazy, unique, interesting, fresh. Surprise me, you know? Give me those ideas that the 3D Mario games have. But also give me challenge in different weird platforming ways that I got from Mario Maker, that I got from those kind of Metroid-style Mario levels, or those puzzle-designed Mario levels that are kind of having a bit of an influence in here. And take those ideas from Super Mario World, where the special world had these extreme challenges that were only there for the hardest of hardcore of people who had really mastered the controls and an understanding of the mechanics to really dig into. And take the collectability, the satisfaction of getting those coins in the 3D Land and 3D World games, where really the fundamental part of those games is the collection aspect, is getting everything in there. So there is this real fundamental distillation of all the best part of my favorite Mario games into a 2D game. I saw someone say, I think it might have been on our Discord, that it feels like where 3D Land and 3D World took the 2D mechanics of Mario and shoved them into a 3D setting, Wonder feels the direct opposite of that, where it takes the format of a 2D Mario but injects it with everything from the 3D games to give it that life and that vivaciousness and that kind of vibe that you're really looking for. So yeah, I mean, the game is tremendous so far. Every level feels unique and different and has... So you're never, like, bored, I would say. That's the thing. Like, oftentimes I find with previous 2D Mario games, I'd do a level and I wouldn't remember anything about it, and I'd just be, like, getting through it for the sake of getting through it. It'd be another level where I'm like, oh, well, this is another level where the fish are jumping out the water and I'm on a bridge and I have to jump over them. You know, tried and tested ideas that have been in every Mario game. And like in this one, I just remember there's a brand new fish enemy who they do this, but like they hover out the water and they kind of like aim at you, and then they lock on and they're like shoot and shoot at you, and you can use them in different ways where, you know, like you need to get up high to a purple coin, and so you're like, okay, I'm gonna wait until it raises high and then do it to get up to that purple coin. The Wunder effect of that level is just like all these fucking fish flying from the bottom of the screen, and you're using them as platforms to get up the top vertically. Like, yes, that is what I'm looking for. I don't need another fucking bridge with cheeps. I need this idea where these kind of arrow-looking fish are attacking me and doing unique different things, and I'll make it feel its own idea, right? And I think the freedom in some senses of having this kind of quote-unquote flower kingdom, right? This refreshing new place lends license in order for the Mario team to feel better about it, because, you know, the brand Bible is really a curse in a lot of ways. You know, Miyamoto coming in and being like, they should all be Toads, you know, it's just a hindrance, I think, to creativity. And the idea that they're like, no, we're going to go to this new place, and so it allows us to be a bit more free with it and be a bit more weird with it, I think is only to its benefit. So yeah, I mean, there are so many little things, right? There are so many things like collecting a royal seed, which is basically like the kind of grand star from Galaxy. When you collect it, you hear a little trill musically at the end that is reminiscent of the collecting a star in Galaxy theme. So just a lovely musical callback. I really like the talking flowers. You know, I thought that they just a weird thing. Again, just another thing that you never would think about in a Mario game, or something that you'd never expect is like voice acting in a Mario game. And like there it is, but they're just these weird flowers that just chat at you, and like sometimes offer hints, sometimes offer ideas about what you should be doing. They are kind of a mini tutorial, or like a way in which to guide the player through certain elements, especially early in the game, for younger players especially, right? And you think about younger players starting video games, I know Nintendo are not very good with accessibility, but at least in this way, you can have a younger player who can't read yet, but can listen and understand, and have a flower tell them something, and they are suddenly unable to understand something they weren't able to before. I think it's very cool. I think it's a nice design approach, and I think they offer just a fun, bizarro kind of weirdness to this world. So I guess some of the traditional stuff that I'll mention is lives are still here, right? Thankfully, the saving system's all good, so you get saved after every level. You can save whenever you want. It's blah, blah, no problem there whatsoever. But lives are still here. And, like, in some ways they just feel completely pointless, partially because when you go to the shops, you can go to the shops and you can buy stuff. You can buy 5 lives for 20 purple coins, and honestly, you'll have, like, 999 purple coins very quickly in this game. And so there was a point where I had both 999 purple coins and 99 lives, and so I was 100%ing worlds, and they're like, well done for 100%ing this world, here's 100 purple coins. I'm like, I already have max purple coins, so I just don't know, like, I don't know what to spend them on, what to do them with. I guess you can buy the standees. It's one thing I haven't really engaged with is the online stuff in this game, partially because I turned it on, and then I did a level, and I was like, the start of the level felt a bit more laggy, and I was like, I'm not going to do this. If this kind of has an impact on the playability of the game, I'm just not going to engage with the online stuff, because I'd rather have a smooth experience for the game as opposed to that. I might have a look at it later, but it felt like as soon as I started that level, I was like, oh, this feels laggier than it did before, so I just turned it off straight away. But I guess you can get those standees that then people plop around the level, and they act as like checkpoints for people, or easier ways for them to get back to stuff, which is a really nice touch, of course. But again, like, this is the kind of the problem I was talking about when I played Horizon Forbidden West, where they're like, you can fast travel, but only if you craft these things, you know, like, or you can fast travel from campfire to campfire, but if you want to fast travel from anywhere to anywhere, you have to just craft this thing that just requires busy work, where you're like, well, I have to have a lot of meat, I have to have a lot of trunks, or wood, I guess, and it just feels fucking pointless. It's like, why is this in here? Why not just let me fast travel from anywhere to anywhere? It just feels like a pointless exercise in tedium. And frankly, lives feel the same way here. I haven't fully game overed yet, but like, because it saves all the time, like the function of lives before, and I criticize it obviously in the new Super Mario Brothers game, but at least the function of lives was, well, there's a tangible negative thing here, which is if you fuck up and die, we'll take you back a few levels and you'll have to go to your previous save point, right? That's a consequence of actions. Here, they've taken away that, and so there is functionally no need for lives anymore. They are just literally grandfathered in for no reason whatsoever. And frankly, for some of those harder levels, for some of those kind kind of difficult challenges where you're jumping and doing platforming that is precise and you'll die a lot, it just necessitates that you go back to the shop and just buy more lives again just to fill up, you know? Absolutely, utterly pointless. I don't understand why. I still don't understand why. In many ways, it's just like, well, we don't have anything else to spend on the shop, so I guess we should have lives in there to do so. So, anyway, that's kind of like the only real kind of old element that I would say is kind of still remaining here that I would say is kind of feels out of place. Otherwise, I would say that everything here just feels super fine-tuned and smart. It's the best Mario has ever felt. Just the movement, the capability. I have found myself switching a lot between D-pad and analog stick. Analog stick mainly for the underwater stuff because it feels more free, right? And also the overworld running around. But I do find myself gravitating towards the D-pad for just traditional 2D platforming. Something about Mario's, the way he moves, the precision of it, feels like it necessitates that, and it just feels wrong doing it with an analog stick. I think also because Mario's ground pound is so tied to pressing the down button. You can press ZL or ZR, I think. ZL, actually, to do the ground pound. But pressing down on the analog stick for a ground pound just feels weirdly soft and mushy and just doesn't work for me. So I have been kind of avoiding analog stick for that stuff. When it comes to like more free movement like underwater, it makes a lot more sense. But when it comes down to just, you know, moving Mario around the world, D-pad is the way to go for me, and that's the way it's been working. So very much enjoyed that. And yeah, like I have basically been playing this game at a pace of like, I'm doing a level, I'm going to try and get as much as I can first time through. If I don't get everything, I go back in straight away. I'm like, well, I know what I'm doing in this level now. I know where to go. And if I don't know where a purple coin is, I'm like, I love the idea of, you know, if you've missed the middle purple coin, you know in your mind of like, well, the first one was here, the last one was here. It has to be within this range of space, right? Like, and that's such a fun little challenge for yourself to just figure out, like, where actually is it in this level? So going back, doing the Wonder Seed, there's also the just additional level of there are sometimes secret exits in the game and you don't know where they are, and sometimes finding them is just a joy in and of itself. And I think for me that actually was something I really did love about Mario World, and that's where structurally these games feel so similar, is that Mario World, you'd finish a level and the levels were so bite-sized and short that you'd go back to them and you'd be like, oh, okay, I can see if I can find the secret exit here, and what is it and where do I go? And yeah, it feels in many ways this is Super Mario Brothers 5, right? Like if you consider Mario World as Mario 4, and we don't think about Yoshi's Island as one, because it's its own thing. Like, I know people love Yoshi's Island. I do as well. I really like that game. It's not a Super Mario Brothers game in the traditional sense. If we just, like, ignore the last decade and a half of Mario, right, from a 2D perspective, and we just, like, New Super Mario Brothers was this weird spin-off thing on its own. This feels like a successor to Mario World in so many ways, but a successor to Mario World that has learned from everything that has come in between, from every other element of Mario that is in the 2D games. It's so funny that, like, from an art style perspective, yes, there's elements that are New Super Mario Brothers about this, but it's so much more rich, so much more vibrant. Mario's animations when he goes into a pipe and his little hat gets left behind and he grabs it and he comes out the other side, he's just poking his head out and he's just, like, full of life, just so full of character. Just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And yeah, and it just feels like it takes the learnings of 3D Mario, Mario Maker, 3D Land and World, and it's just like, New Super Mario Brothers, maybe they happen, they kind of look like this, but they're really far, far, far away from what this game is trying to do. So, yeah, it's a fucking brilliant game, and it's absolutely one of my favorite things I played this year, and it's the best 2D Mario game ever made, and I've not even finished it yet, and I think there's a lot more fun stuff to do, and I see myself 100%ing this thing. The pace I'm going at right now is definitely what I'm intending to do, so I'm very much looking forward to playing more of it, and yeah, we'll get back next time with Bally's thoughts as well, which will be exciting, and yeah, I'm sure we'll have a lot of conversations about this game at the end of the year, but that is it for my thoughts on Super Mario Brothers Wonder. Let's get back to the show. Wow, Mario Wonder was a real disappointment, turns out, and I hated it, and it was the worst game ever. Real shame to hear my thoughts there. It's going to win worst game of the year at the Game Awards.
Well, I've still not played it at all.
Yes, you still not played it, Bally. Yeah, we're going to have to get you through it. It's going to be a bit of a trial, but you'll love it, I'm sure. So let's go on to our next game, Bally. You've been playing one of my favourites from this year, a small little game about an Indian family in Canada called Venba. Bally, what do you think of Venba?
I think Venba has a lot of false marketing. And what I mean by this is correct me if I'm wrong and I've missed the wrong trailer or whatever. I feel like Venba was sold as, it's a cooking game. It's cozy. It's going to make you feel warm. It's the nicest. It's a nice warm blanket. Do you want a bit of nice Indian cuisine that you're going to learn how to make and you're going to enjoy it? Yeah, you want to play Venba. That's your kind of game. And it's like, so I think it appealed to a cozy crowd. And I think actually the game predominantly, not in totality, is pretty dreary and negative and really politically makes you go, oh god, like, oh, they don't, oh, like it
hits hard,
it hits
man. Like
hard.
it's a narrative banger in the sense that you'll walk away from it changed as a person in a way, right? Like,
yeah, I don't think any of the marketing implied that the game is about the drudge of being an immigrant and how tough it is to raise a family in a new culture. Right?
Yeah,
I missed that in the marketing. Did you see any of that in the marketing?
I think like they probably touched on it and about like kind of the cultural heritage of it and stuff like that, but I don't think they made it forefront. And it's interesting, right? Because I do think a lot of those kind of cozy people on Twitch and stuff will have played it. And I watched a bunch of videos on it afterwards, and I was like, man, every single like female streamer playing this like cries at the end, basically, you know, like it's a consistent thing. People are just like ending this game with just like the mascara on their face, essentially. Because you know, I think I mentioned this when I talked about it on the show. This game packs an emotional punch, and like it's extremely well conveyed and written, and like is real in a way that is not many games kind of approach, which I think is really cool.
Because I feel like I can count maybe on one hand the number of kind of games that are that real and kind of address real life modern day politics. And I think what this game does well is, I think, from my perspective, where I don't have immigrant heritage like the characters in Venba, and from my perspective, I think it conveys some of the more obvious challenges of being an immigrant family, which is a lot of the racism experienced, especially around employment. I definitely feel like I was aware of a lot of that stuff. I think what the game does really well for me is it captures some of the less obvious stresses about kind of migrating, and like, for example, your child or the kid in this game, Cavan, assimilating into a new culture, and then him not wanting to be part of his parents' culture. Like, and I think it's that nuance that I don't think about a ton, and I think this game has made me think about it a lot more, and the challenge of that the idea of moving to a different country with a very different culture, and that your own child is assimilating into that culture and turning your own culture against you, like from your child, not from the external forces, which are obviously still doing it with employment issues and other bad stuff that happens in this game. But like, I think it hits really hard.
It's one of those games, because I was actually talking to my mom about this game and telling her about it, and I'd be really fascinated to see, like, it's very hard to get my parents to play any kind of video game because it's like anathema to them. But like, they really is in a lot of ways their lived experience, because they were children of immigrants, right? Coming to a different country at a young age and having that struggle of like having a culture that they kind of half grown up in, but now they have to acclimatize to a different one. It's slightly different from Venba because Cavan is born into the culture, whereas my parents were young, like 5 or 10 when they came over. Okay, so it's slightly different, but similar, but still, I'm sure that those tensions existed. Yeah, right?
And I mean, I remember you saying, MZ, that I sort of asked, does this do any unique to video game kind of storytelling? And you kind of sided that not really, and I'd push back and say I think it actually does do something very interesting. And I'd say that like the food and the cooking predominantly in this game is used almost as an escape from the drudgery, especially for Venba. Right. Where I feel like the food and her being like, oh, but now I can shut myself off from all this horrendous stuff going on, and let's just make some amazing Southern Indian Tamil food. And it's like, it feels a bit like an escape, and I feel like that is mirrored as being the player, where something happens and then all of a sudden you're playing this nice colorful
you kind of need a break from it, right? And the game provides that.
And I definitely felt that with most of the mini games. And I like, the food looks great. I think it's
The sounds though, right? Like the sounds of cooking
Yeah.
are just so good in this
and
game.
I think the game does a great job of having so many fail states for all the dishes, where
Right, yeah.
it really hammers home how hard a lot of this cuisine is to make. And yeah, I'm under the impression now that there's a different metal kitchen appliance for every single type of Indian dish, because it felt like
You should look at my grandma's cupboard, because like yes,
like
absolutely that is the case.
different one. There's like a goddamn tower of metal that you're like where you're layering is it the coconut and the flour, I believe.
That's idli, yeah. That's how you
idli?
make idli. Is that one?
No, not that one. The other stacking one.
The other tower.
the other tower, because idli is almost like steamed dumpling style things,
It's
right?
steamed within. Yes, yeah.
I'm thinking of the one where it's like coconut slash.
Oh, the one that was like a rocket ship one.
Yeah.
Yes, I've never made that one. That was actually one of the dishes that I'd never really heard of before.
And stuff like the biryani was incredibly complicated. Like, oh my god,
Yes.
it was so complicated. And then I really enjoyed the dosa, where there's just so many variations, but still with every variation, there's just so much. Like everything is so specific about timings with heat and the order at which things are added, because it releases one flavor and this kind of like. I thought it covers that stuff incredibly well, and I feel like with a little or lots or no cooking experience at all, I think anyone playing this game can learn something about like how these dishes are made and kind of that kind of stuff. So I think that, combined with kind of the political message of this game, and you know, the story does go places, and I like the way it goes through time and tells the story.
Man, like, not to spoil anything, but like that section in the middle of the game where there's a whole sequence of cooking lots of stuff in a row, the end of that sequence is one of the most heartbreaking things like in a game in a while. Like, you feel it hard, you know? Like, man.
It hits hard, and
yeah,
it's just and there's a lot of a focus on like relationship with parents and children and their parents and that kind of thing, and it's just a really well told story, and it only takes like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Maybe took me 2 hours because some of those fail states on some of those dishes kept coming back. But I would really definitely recommend this game. It's on Game Pass, it's on Switch, it's on everything to my knowledge, and it's a really cool game. I think we can have a good discussion about this game when it comes to Game of the Year and stuff. But it hit me hard in lots of good ways, and I feel like I learned a lot, and I think that's probably what the developers of this game were hoping, that everyone could have a good time and learn something, because feels good.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very glad you got around to this one, because it's definitely up there as one of my favorites this year. And you know, it shows the efficiency of storytelling as well, and what can be achieved in a short amount of time. I know like an hour and a half for most media is like regular length for a movie or whatever, but like it's extremely short for a game, and in order to like pack all that stuff into such a short period of time while still telling a really coherent, well told story, I thought it was really, really special. So very, very cool. Venba, one to check out if you have not. So from one narrative game to another, not quite the same. But Bally, we are in the month of October, you know, and it's me and you. We're like the biggest fucking pussies in the world. Like we cannot do horror. We can't do any of that shit. Like, I do not want to see it in my life. Never here for it. However, I do like visual novels a lot, as everyone knows here. And earlier this year, Square Enix put out a visual novel. Not in a thing that you'd expect them to do, right? Square Enix, obviously, every year they seem to put out like 25 games, and like half of them no one's ever heard of, and like none of them sell very well, but Square Enix continues to do it, and they're like...
And then they moan that the biggest ones don't sell well either.
Exactly,
and it's this vicious cycle of like, Square Enix is shit, they don't know what they're doing, and then they keep going.
Yes,
weird.
But I do appreciate that they do this weird stuff from time to time. And it turned out that one of their weird experiments was great. It's a game called Paranormasight. And it is a horror tinge, I'm going to say, visual novel. Its full title is Paranormasight: The Seven Mysteries of Honjo, and it is based in Japan, and it is about these kind of curses that happen. So there's this idea of this event called the Rite of Resurrection, and there are certain people, right, who want to bring people back from the dead. Someone has been lost, someone's died, someone's passed away. They want to bring them back from the dead. And the only way to do this is to use these cursed stones in order to bring people back. So you have these stones, and different characters have them. And so when this event happens, this one midnight in the middle of Japan, a bunch of random people in the right locations get these stones, and each curse stone allows you to kill people in very specific ways. So for example, Shogo, who's the first character you play as, his curse can activate if someone walks away from him. So if someone turns around, walks away from him, he can use his curse to just kill that person instantly. There's another one where if someone is holding an object that can set something on fire, so like a lighter or, anything of that, like a match or something like that, then that curse stone can kill that person if they're holding something that can set someone on fire. So there are these different curses, and each person has one. And the fun part of it is that sometimes you just don't know what a curse is from a certain person, right? And you have no idea what they're doing, so you have to be careful in like dialogue choices and stuff like that. And the kind of frame of the narrative is you are switching between multiple characters' perspectives and just trying to get to the bottom of what the hell's going on. Like, what is this curse? Where did it come from? There are other mysteries on top of it. It does my favorite Phoenix Wright thing, which is the best thing of any detective story, which is something else like this happened 20 years ago. But it also leans into Japanese history of like, okay, back in the Edo period, these curse stones first arose because of these people back in the day. There was this like relationship between these characters back like hundreds of years ago, and this has been passed on to the future, and now it exists now, basically. So that's the kind of framework, I guess, for the setup for it. The reason it's kind of horror tinged is that there's some kind of spookiness around it. Obviously, the game kind of begins at a nighttime period, and it has a first-person view. And one of the things you can do with a first-person view is when you kind of give control to a camera, you can kind of shock people in a way. So one of the things that happens at the very beginning of the game is you're with this girl, right? And it has the art style, I would say, is like anime inspired, but it has that kind of almost Japanese horror kind of vibe to it, where sometimes the faces will like get the eyes going in a certain way and the face in a certain way that is kind of recognizable from that kind of that type of kind of scariness. And you're with this girl, and she's like, suddenly her hand goes over her mouth, and she's like pointing behind her, and she's like, her arm is shaking, and she's like, oh my god, this thing behind you. And so you turn your character around, and there's nothing there, and then you turn back to her, and like the thing that the camera does is it will suddenly just like shift it towards something, which is almost akin to a jump scare in a way. So it'll just like shift it, and all of a sudden you see her like just on the ground, like eyes completely glazed over, mouth hanging open, like arms, limbs in like weird directions, dead on the ground, right? So look, it's some freaky shit, right? And then sometimes what will happen is like you'll be looking around in first person, and it will just be like, oh, here's a jump scare, right? It'll just be like fucking shit throw in your face.
I've got a quick question. Have you played Batman Arkham VR yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I think you should play that, because your little story just reminded me of something from that game.
Oh god, I don't want to do it now, because that's in VR. That's even more frightening than this. But yeah, I would say that the horror tinge aspect of this wears off fairly quickly. It's the first few hours or so where you'll get a few jump scares. So one of the characters you play as Yako, she is a schoolgirl, and her friend Mio are at school, and they're trying to figure out what happened to her other friend. So seemingly her other friend committed suicide, a couple of months ago or something, and Yako doesn't believe it. She's like, no, she wouldn't have done that. She wouldn't have committed suicide. Something must have happened. So they're at school. Great idea. They're in school in the middle of the night, and they're using a Ouija board, because that's a great idea to do as children in Japan at that time. And so they're like, okay, Mio, who's her friend, is like, she can talk to spirits basically, and so she's like, okay, let's use this Ouija board and see if the spirit of your friend will talk to you. And so you like slowly see like them moving the thing around, and it answers questions, all that sort of stuff. And then like you're about to leave, and like the lights go out, and like you start moving around the room. And I knew this, I was playing this in bed at night, right? I'm a fucking idiot. And I'm like, I know what it's going to do. So I turned the switch screen away from me, and I'm just like moving the thing. And sure enough, there's a fucking ghost. And it's like, and then it just gives you a jump scare, and that's it. And then like after that, I didn't really have any more of that stuff. And I'm thankful for that, because I think it's a little cheap in a lot of ways. It wasn't that scary, if I'm honest, but it's just like, I always get like, they even do it of like just the kind of snapping to somebody. So like you look around, it's like, oh, it just snapped to the character. It's just a regular character, but the way that it snaps the camera to it gives you a little bit of a jolt in a way. So it does a little bit of that, but after that, it kind of progresses more into the mystery side of it, right? The detective-y kind of visual novel stuff that I'm there for, which is, what the fuck happened here? What do these curses mean? Who is connected here? Who are the people who have the curse stones? What does each curse stone do? And so basically the opening gambit of it is you play as Shogo, and you play these kind of two different timelines of Shogo. One where he basically goes on a rampage killing everybody, and then one where he doesn't. He makes a different choice at the beginning, and it shows a different timeline, and the end of that timeline you see him dead, and you're like, oh, what's going on here? And then it jumps to 3 new timelines of Yako the schoolgirl, you have Tsutsumi, I think, who is the detective guy, and then you have Haru, who is a mother who, in a pretty dark twist, her son was kidnapped. She's kind of the son of, she's like the daughter of like police people, part of a kind of police family, right? Her son was kidnapped, and the police weren't able to do anything about it because they were trying to kind of leverage the police, and her son was murdered basically as part of that. And so her entire motive is, well, I need the right of resurrection to bring my son back from the dead, essentially. So everyone has their own motives for what they're doing. Obviously, Yako wants to bring her friend back from the dead. Haru wants to bring her son back. The detective is there just figuring out what's going on because another cop has been murdered in a mysterious way. So each of these has like interesting setups to them. And then what happens is you kind of go through each of these storylines, and you'll bounce back and forth between them. So some of them will get locked off, and it's like, okay, you need to go to this other person's storyline to figure out what happened there. That will unlock something that lets you progress to the other storyline. And generally, I would say it's kind of linear. Like, there's not a lot of personal choice going on here. But one of the coolest things it does is it treats you as a part of the story in a way that, like, the very beginning of the game, you start it up and it just starts and you're talking to this character called the storyteller, and the storyteller is this guy in a hat and a beard, and this kind of like almost carnival music is playing, and he's like, aha, I am the storyteller, please tell me your name, by which it means the player type your name in, right? It's kind of like an Earthbound thing, right, where it's like you're going to be involved somehow in this, which is interesting. And then he's like, okay, and now watch on this television, and that's why the whole game is like in a frame of a TV, because it's like you are kind of like looking at the TV of the events of what's happening, what's going on. And so here's the cool thing, right? I'm going to spoil an early thing the game does. It's a mechanical spoiler, but I think it's very cool. I think it might get you interested in this game if you otherwise weren't. So, one of the characters, their curse is that they play this horrible sound, and this sound eventually causes you to die if it plays for like 30 seconds or something, right? And so what happens is you do that, and you go through, and you're like, well, characters die, and you go back to the main menu, and you are back to the storyteller, and he's like, I wonder if your fate can be changed. And so you go back to the scene again, you restart it, and you get to that same point. I was like, I wonder if I turn the volume down on my Switch. I was like, okay, I'm just going to turn the volume all the way down on my Switch, and it didn't work. I died again. I was like, but I think I'm along the right lines here. And so I went back into it a third time, and I went into the menu, and I turned the master volume in the game down to 0, and I went back, and all of a sudden he's like, why isn't it working? Why is my curse not working on you? And I'm like, shivers went down my spine. I was like, oh my fucking God. Like,
I love that.
It is so cool.
I love that, but they would have got extra marks if they could have linked it to the Switch volume.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I was like, well,
possible.
Yeah, totally. Like, I think that was one of those things that was like, I think that would have been great if they had been able to do it that way, but even doing it within the menu, I was like, oh my, this is awesome. Fucking, it's so cool. And like that idea is developed, and there's some later stuff in the game that does is also very cool.
Also sounds horrifying.
So that's just like kind of, yeah, it is. Yeah, but I think it gives you a really good taste of like the expectations to have from this game and what it does. I'll say overall, as a detective narrative, I don't think it's quite as effective as like the Danganronpa games or the Uchikoshi, like 999. Like 999 I still probably prefer to this game, and that's, I think, because the wild, crazy reveals that those games have, this one is less interested in that. It's more interested in developing the characters. It's more interested in teasing you about the possibilities of who's involved and what's going on, and you can kind of figure it out if you're paying attention. direction before the game tells you, essentially. There's definitely a few twists in there that are really cool near the end of the game, but for the most part, I was like, oh, okay, the game's kind of telling me this is this guy, and it's not really a mystery anymore. I kind of know, but it's interesting to follow how that develops and what goes on. So it doesn't hit you with the wild out of nowhere twist that I love from those other detective games, but I think it tells a really strong narrative. I think the characters are super strong. It has a great, it has a really creepy vibe, but the music I think is excellent and just very, very kind of earwormy in a way. And it's nice to hear the kind of upbeat detective music versus the kind of more somber music as well. I think it has a really good soundtrack and just great art. And it feels like this was just a small Skunkworks team within Square Enix that were we're going to fucking do this video game. Even if we don't have much budget, we're going to make it happen. And you can kind of feel that because there's no voice acting, right? A lot of visual novels these days have full voice acting, and I think is definitely a way to lift things up. But that kind of missing production element makes it feel like they could have gone even further with it. And I hope the success of this game means that they can, because the game has overwhelmingly positive on Steam, so everyone loves it. It's done super well on Steam. And I hope that means that they're like, oh, let's greenlight another one of these, because I think it's a very cool idea. And yeah, I just love weird detective visual novels. They are one of my favorite genres at this point in time. And anytime a new one with an interesting art style or an interesting concept comes out, I just heard a lot of buzz around this when it came out, and I was like, I've got to check that out at some point this year. April or something like that, early in the year. And yeah, I heard a few people talk about it, and I was like, yep, I trust these people's thoughts on this type of game. So I decided to pick it up in a sale on Switch, and definitely worth playing. A great handheld game as well. Great game to play in bed as long as you're not fucking scared like I am. But yeah.
Did you have any nightmares?
No, I was okay on that front. I was all right. Immortality gave me more nightmares than this game. Oh my god,
Immortality! Jesus Christ!
So if you're able to get through Immortality, then I think you're probably okay with this game.
That game made me think I was tripping.
I know. That game before. Yeah, definitely one of the scariest games I've played.
My TV broken? Oh no, it's just trying to scare the tits off me.
Just some weird shit happening. Yeah, so Paranormasight is the name of that game. Check it out on Switch. Highly recommend going and giving it a go. But that, Bally, is going to wrap us up for this segment. We will be back, though, after the break with your emails. See you in a bit.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the second part of today's show. It is time for that time again, the emails. We've not done them in a little while, as MBZ said at the top of the show. So if you would like to send an email into the show, please email ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. There's also a channel in our Discord server. Join the community over there. Post a question in the channel. The channel is called Emails. You can't miss it. We can also pick them up on there. So send them all in. Our first email is from GMZ from the USA. Although because they're from the USA, I'll call them GMZ.
You'll acquiesce to the Z here. Yeah.
GMZ. So it says, I come from the wonderful USA, and I've been listening to your podcast to help me go to bed. Well, What a compliment there.
We just put people to sleep, Bally. We just that's our we're
sleep.
just so boring. We put people to sleep. It's great.
I've been doing so since the Nintendo Power podcast ended, and after listening to it for many nights, I have to say, yeah, it definitely is Nintendo propaganda, and your podcast is way better. However, I did feel like Warp Zone was a neat concept, and you should do something like it, but more difficult and more varied. As well as obligatory question, the 3D Marios are all great, except Sunshine, which I've tried twice and still couldn't get into, but the 2D games are a mixed bag. I've always gotten frustrated with them, even though I've wanted to try to enjoy them. So my question is, do you think Mario Wonder will be frustrating, excluding the incredible badge system?
Oh, thank you for writing in. I think first time writer as well, which is always good to see. And yeah, man, I also listen to the Nintendo Power podcast just as a sick kind of, wanting to understand what their thoughts were, how they would formulate a podcast,
Why did it end?
I think just Nintendo killed it because Nintendo had weird. I don't know. Like Chris Slate, I believe it was, who ran it. He used to work for Nintendo Power magazine, right? And so
okay, so he's in NOA.
Yes, exactly. So he works for NOA now and used to run Nintendo Power, or used to work on Nintendo Power magazine back in the day. And then they decided to bring back this podcast idea, right? I think Kit and Krista were kind of involved in helping that happen, but he was the kind of driving force behind it. And yeah, it was very fluffy as a show. It was basically PR as a show in a lot of ways. And it's one of those things where the way Nintendo works, and we hear this from Kit and Krista's podcast a lot, of like, you can't talk about other systems, you've got to like toe the company line, you have to say the Super Mario Brothers Wonder game every time you talk about it, like Nintendo is very afraid legally with all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was always, I always found it a fascinating listen from like, what are they going to slip up and say PlayStation one day? I just wanted to see if they were going to fuck up.
Just edit it out. It's not live.
No, I know, but sometimes maybe the editor misses it. Maybe something happened. I just wanted some juicy.
That's why the whole podcast got nuked.
Probably. They probably said PlayStation one day, and they're like, kill it. It's too much of a liability. But yes, they did. So what GMZ refers to here, the Warp Zone, is a Warp Zone quiz, which they did every episode, which was like, here's a hint for a game that came out 30 years ago, 20 years ago, and 10 years ago. I think it was like the month it came out, based on the month, because it was a monthly podcast basically. Okay. So it's like October 30 years ago, October 20 years ago, October 10 years ago, and that's what they would do basically, is be like, but the thing is with that quiz was like, it was always just the easiest fucking thing in the world. And it was like, oh, I wonder, it was a game where Mario went on holiday to a tropical location. And it's like, well, if you don't get Mario Sunshine, why are you working for Nintendo? You're a fucking idiot, basically. So, like, yeah, it was kind of stuff like that. And I always thought, like, yeah, okay, sometimes they got them with some interesting picks and some weird license game on NES or whatever. But for the most part, it was just very tame. It's like those videos Nintendo puts on their YouTube channel of like, here's a quiz question, and it's like a 30-second video. It's like, which princess has blonde hair? And it's like, well, I don't know.
I mean, I'm the arsehole who kind of felt like the Nintendo Minute was a bit like this, to be honest. And maybe Krista would admit that it was pretty fluffy. And
yeah, they had to be, right?
Totally, and I do really enjoy their content now. And it's weird when you hear about like, oh, you can't say PlayStation, you can't say this, and then Nintendo go and film a Nintendo Smash Direct at Sakurai's house and show off all of his games consoles, and they don't seem to bat an eyelid, or maybe they just missed it.
Like Sakurai has a cheat code, like he can kind of get away with whatever he wants because he's Sakurai, right? Like, yes. Which I find very interesting, especially because like, the way those Sakurai ones were shot, especially over the pandemic, was like he had like a laugh track of people off camera and like just a weird setup, and it just felt like a fucking YouTube video. And like, no wonder he went on and became a YouTuber, because he was basically practicing that with those presentations, like the fact that Nintendo allowed him to be like, I'm just going to point a camera at myself and just record myself with two controllers playing against myself to show out the intricate mechanics of Smash Brothers. I think like you can see it, how much the community appreciated those videos, because they felt a lot more personal and just like, I'm just fucking playing the video game and just talking about my design process, and I'm a nerd about this stuff, so I'm going to tell you about it. So yeah, I think there's a unique kind of set of rules that applies to Masahiro Sakurai and to nobody else, basically, under Nintendo's banner. So yeah, I guess that's why. But yeah, I guess this is our last chance to answer this question, having yet to see if Mario Wonder will be frustrating. But yeah, I mean, what do you think, Bally? Is it something you're worried about?
I think there's two main reasons that I find other 2D Marios frustrating. I think one part is probably the live system, and I think the other part is mediocrity.
Wow,
I think,
wow, no specificity. That's just they're generally mediocre.
I think and this is where I think our opinions are so different to so much of this industry.
Yes.
But I honestly think if you have played Celeste, Kaze and the Wild Masks, Meat Boy,
even Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Nintendo's own platformer that's probably better than most Mario games.
Right. I mean, Tropical Freeze actually does have a live system, so it's not just about the live system.
Right.
But when I'm talking about mediocrity, it's about variety, it's about feel, and it's about... I mean, something like Celeste has all those story beats between levels. Like, it's not just purely about platforming, it's about the presentation. And those Super Mario Brothers, the new Super Mario Brothers games, although, I mean, I don't much like World, and I've not played 3, and my favorite Mario game is probably like Yoshi's Island, if that even counts.
Which I think a lot of people would argue is not.
People would argue it doesn't count. But Yoshi's Island has better pacing, more variety, interesting art style, all these things that the Mario series tends to lean away from. And it's that variety and freshness. And think of Tropical Freeze, where you're doing like a minecart level and then it goes into a log flume and then it goes into this, or you're doing that like one with all the platforming on the fruit. And there's just a freshness and a variety that has really frustrated me with Mario in the past. And that's why Wunder is exciting, that hopefully, yes, I know it's probably got the same live system, but it's that freshness, that variety that games like Celeste, Meat Boy, they just throw at you constantly to make you like... We have played a lot of 2D platformers. We are quite good at 2D platformers. We need variety and things to challenge us and make us think about the genre in a different way, and little to nothing in the new Super Mario Brothers series ever does that. The first one was great, like it was so fresh on DS, but I didn't pick up Wii, I didn't pick up DS, not DS, sorry, 3DS 2, and then I played the Wii U one, and the Wii U one is good and probably arguably is the best of the bunch, but it lacks all the freshness that the first one had. And you know, we said these points before in the show, but yeah, Mario's just mediocre. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah, I think on the point of lives, I think lives are annoying, but I think the worst thing about previous Mario games, even New Super Mario Bros. U does this, if you lose all your lives, you have to go back to your previous save point, which might be 4 levels ago, because the way they fucking handle saving in the New Super Mario Bros. Games is unbelievably archaic.
Do you think Wunder might have this?
No, I don't. And I think it's because the structure is somewhat different, right?
It's more like Forgotten Land, where you can pick which level you go in.
Yes, because there's an overworld of like which level in what order I can do. I think doing that and not saving after every level, I believe it does autosave after every level.
So did they fix that on purpose, or was it an accidental result of their new world design?
Maybe, exactly. It could very well be the case that they stumbled into it because they've done more of a 3D world presentation for the level selection here versus the traditional Mario overworld, where you can see the line of you go to this one, to this one. Like, the fact that Mario U has a save system akin to Donkey Kong fucking Country on the Super Nintendo, where you can only save at specified points after finishing a castle or doing whatever.
And Mario World, that's the same system.
Yeah, they kept it for so many years. Fucking baffling, and like by far the most frustrating thing about those games, because you will eventually get to a level where you're like, oh, this one's really difficult, and I keep knocking my head against it, and you'll die. And then you're punished by having to replay these levels you've already done.
Yeah.
There's no reason for you to play them again, but they just arbitrarily knock you back again and are like, nope, play them all again to get to this castle to then save. And I'm like, this had to have gone 20 years ago, let alone 10 years ago, let alone fucking now. So that's always been, I think, my peak frustration with that series, is just the way they handle progression in that way. It's just archaic as hell. And I it seems like Wonder's not going to do that. At least, you know, I don't know 100% certain.
I mean, it's currently sitting at a 92 on OpenCritic. this system is still in the game and it's gotten a 92 on OpenCritic, I've lost faith in the reviewing industry. Like, I cannot trust another review ever again because I'm sick to death of bollocks like this getting a free pass.
I do find, Bally, though, that we often bring up these little issues on our show. I never hear anyone else talk about them. And it's often like, I don't know, maybe people just don't overlook them. Maybe it's because the way that our show operates is that we tend to go quite in detail on the games that we talk about, and so we get into the nuances and little frustrations and those things. But yeah, it's a thing that I don't think I ever heard anyone talk about when Mario U came out. And for me, it's like one of the biggest stumbling blocks of that game,
Totally.
which is a little baffling. But
if you look at purely just the levels and their design, yes, they're not the best, but the game would flow so much better if lives were out of the question. It just checkpointed better. Didn't have that crazy save system we just discussed. Like, it's still a good game. It's just not a great game, and that issue is a big issue.
Yeah, and in terms of like getting frustrated with the game itself, like I definitely found that certain levels, I think in New Super Mario Bros. 2 especially, like there's certain like design decisions that get made. I think the last boss of that game, I remember being really frustrated with it. And it was like this level where there's this Bowser and a bunch of coins falling, Bowser's in the background, and like you're jumping on these platforms that I think are disappearing. There's a point at which you can just fall through the floor and just fall to your death, right? And like that errant slip, that one little slide of, I just slightly missed it. I fell down a hole, yes, a big hole. And I lost all the progress in that boss fight as a result. Now, I can't actually remember how this boss fight goes. I should probably look it up and remind myself. But I remember walking away from that one just being very frustrated with the way it was put together. And it felt more like a gotcha than like an interestingly designed boss. I think this is a thing that you really struggle with 2D platformers in particular, is how do you make a challenge commensurate with the rest of the game? Because so much of the game is about platforming, and so much of bosses are, well, it's a static screen. You know, Mario 2 is, you throw these things at this guy who's standing there doing stuff. You know, there's bosses in the Mario kind of 3 and World oeuvre, which are, you're in a room, especially in 3, you're locked in there with these Koopa kids, and yes, platforming's part of it, of course, but it's so constrained compared to the rest of the game where you're moving.
I think that's where a game like Yoshi's Island takes the prize. I think those bosses are different, weird. You're still using the shooting mechanic often in those fights, but everyone is different. It feels fresh and feels like a natural evolution and isn't just purely platforming, you know? Obviously, we talked about Tropical Freeze boss fights before, but yeah, Mario boss fights in 2D games are just flat and weird. And you're right, they don't know how to use the platforming in a different way.
Yeah, so I'm looking up this boss fight now. It's Bowser in the background, he's giant. You're platforming on these moving platforms, but at any time, Bowser can just get his giant claw and just smash away all the platforms in one row, basically. And so if you're in the way when that happens, well, you're fucked. You're going to fall into the lava, and that's it, game over. And this boss goes on for a long time. You're climbing slowly climbing up the tower to get to the very top, and you're just going to be standing on these platforms and slowly, again, it's my least favorite boss design of like, well, you just have to wait. There's no progressing yourself. You just wait until Bowser does this thing and just keep slowly hoping you can survive. It's basically a survival game. Survive long enough without fucking up your platforming, and you'll make it to the end. And yeah, it's honestly, it's a thing that I think 3D World and 3D Land found a bit of a way around, because the bosses in those games were basically levels, right? Like, they were platforming levels to get to the end, where I don't think any of the 2D games have ever really tried that in a sense. I guess to some degree, this new Super Mario Bros. Thing is that, but the difference is it's a static screen just slowly scrolling versus a full level that you have control of, like in the 3D Land, 3D World games.
I am confident Wunder will fix that. I've not seen it, and I can't remember it from a trailer or anything, but I'm confident it will.
Yeah, and I'm really interested in what that approach will look like. Like, will it look more like a Mario 3D Land, 3D World thing where it is just a level and the boss is a hindrance throughout the level, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's probably the best way to approach it. It's, at the end of the day, it's a platformer, and so much of what you do, so much of what you learn in the game itself is jumping from place to place, moving across a space. So it would make sense for the challenge to work along those lines. So there's a hope that it can get there. But yeah, I would say like that sort of stuff has always felt a bit frustrating for me from those games' perspectives. And Yeah, there's certainly levels. There's levels you get hung up on. Like, I mean, the fucking sun in Mario 3 is just a piece of shit. Like, I hate that thing so much. Absolutely annoying. There's always an annoying element, you know. Mario 2 is the fucking mask that chase you that we're terrified of as kids. Like, you know, there's always going to be frustrating systems in there. So if Wunder streamlines a lot of those frustrating systems out, I mean, I think it'll come out as one of the best ones out there, just simply because of that fact, you know. So,
nice.
There you go.
Great question. Dave97 from Discord says, "Hey TNL, do you think the Switch successor will be 4K? Do you think Nintendo will have trouble adapting to 4K development? We are seeing dev cycles getting longer for both PlayStation and Xbox. Thanks."
Alrighty. So yeah, I think this is just one of those things that it's kind of just let's get up to a modern standard. I'm interested in right now, what is the percentage of ownership for 4K TVs in the UK or anywhere, right? Versus 1080 TVs or just standard HD TVs, right?
I bet it's quite high.
It probably is. And I think the reason for that is if you go into any shop these days, any place looking to buy a TV, you're just going to buy a 4K one because that's kind of the default that is out there. Like, you have to try really hard, I think, to buy a 1080p TV because most new TVs or most ones on the market right now, for the last few years at least, are 4K. And I think 4K is just at a point now that everything is just more affordable as well. So, like, you can get a good 4K TV for, like, 300 quid or less, right? And I think that approachability probably means more people are getting there. It just depends on where people are in the cycle. Like, you know, if you've just bought a 1080p TV 3 years ago, you're probably not going to upgrade it for another 7 years, are you? So you'll be a while getting into 4K versus someone else who has had a 1080p for 10 years and, you know, a year ago they decided to upgrade and now it's just going to be 4K by definition. So in some ways I think Nintendo has to do this just from this is just like what TVs look like now, and if they've
been dragged into this position, they've not voluntarily gone, you know what would look great with our games? 4K.
Exactly. It's just what the modern standard of TV is, and so they're like, well, this is just the default, we kind of have to adapt to it. And yeah, I'm not sure if I would define 4K and development cycles getting longer as a thing necessarily. I think like resolution of what something looks like versus pushing the fidelity of what games can do is somewhat removed from each other in a way, right? Like resolution is just like, okay, I mean, I can play Mario 3 at 4K if I want.
Yeah, it's kind of the end point rather than the doing part, the nuts and bolts, as it were.
Right, because you can upscale Breath of the Wild to 4K right now, and it will run out of 4K resolution. It's not built for it, but you can make it look like that and play like that.
That would count as checkerboarding, right? Like it's filling in pixels.
Well, I think yes. I think probably yes. You're right with that. Right. It's doing that, or there might be a way on PC of doing it where it's not actually. It's like actually kind of bumping it somehow other way. I don't know the technical details too much on that stuff, but again, I think I would probably separate 4K as a resolution versus the power PlayStation, Xbox are putting into games, because dev cycles getting longer is not because of 4K. It's because the power of these systems are able to push more, you know, polygons and stuff, right? You can have a Nintendo game as it looks right now in 4K. It still takes the same development power, right? At least that's what it feels like. At least that's the theory, right? So yeah, I don't think it really affects things too much. The only way it would affect things if Nintendo think to themselves, oh, we're going 4K, therefore we need to up the fidelity of things even higher from our perspective, you know?
Yeah, and I think that is a little bit chicken and egg scenario where will the next Zelda look better than Tears of the Kingdom in terms of graphical fidelity? Well, probably, because it will be 4K, but do they decide to do something radical with the art style because it's in 4K?
Right.
I think the 4K doesn't affect that decision, but it might have a knock-on effect as to how reviewers review how good the game looks, for example. And I think that 4K just gives a bit more scope, you know. It allows them to do an art style that might otherwise have been canned because they thought, this wouldn't look that great in 1080p. We should probably do this in 4K. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the other thing to keep in mind as well is, like, a lot of games coming out this generation aren't actually in 4K. Like, they're doing the checkerboard thing, right? Like, lots of games that come out on PlayStation and Xbox, they're actually hitting resolutions of like 1440 or lower, and they are just pumping up the resolution with the kind of upscaling technology.
Dynamic resolution.
Dynamic resolution happens a lot. Like, Horizon Forbidden West, I'm playing that game, and I look at it and I'm like, well, this resolution is like 720p right now because there's like 17 characters on the screen, and I can see it. I can see the fucking jaggies. I can see it. I can see the resolution drop in real time between different camera cuts in a cutscene. Like, adaptive resolution, because frame rate is important in performance mode, you're going to get a lot of stuff. There's a lot of me playing Horizon is me looking at those cutscenes and being like, well, that's not in 4K the whole time, right? So I do think that it's a little bit of a misnomer, because especially if you watch like Digital Foundry, right? They'll do pixel counts and they'll be like, well, actually it's running at 1985p or something stupid, right? It's not actually at the resolution that you believe is true 4K the whole way through. And I don't know that there are many games that do that the whole way through on PlayStation and Xbox. It's obviously easier to do in a graphics mode, right? Because then you're pushing all of your power towards the resolution department versus the frame rate department.
Yeah.
But on performance modes, and performance modes I still think look great for the most part when I'm playing Horizon. It looks phenomenal, it looks incredible. And part of that is because it's running at 60 frames per second versus pushing the resolution higher. The resolution I'm getting in my eyes is still 4K, but it's not actually probably rendering at 4K in performance mode,
And I'd be interested, like, in terms of frame rate, what Nintendo go for a lot of their first party games, where Mario Odyssey is a great example, where they did manage to churn out 60, right? But obviously Breath of the Wild 2 is the Kingdom 30. And
yes,
will the next system bump everything up to 60? But does the fact that things will all be in 4K mean that it'll actually still be that divide between Mario would probably be 60, but Zelda probably 30? Like, that's what I'd put my money on. Like, I don't think they'll suddenly revolutionize frame rate because they have been dragged into 4K, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And like, again, Tears of the Kingdom is a great example of like, hey, the when frame rate drops in Tears of the Kingdom is because it's doing incredibly complex physics things, right? Every time you open Ultra Hand, the game drops frames because that system, trying to implement that system, takes a lot of horsepower, right? And so it's not a visual graphic thing, right? This system requires a lot of power from the Switch, and so it's going to have a hard time with it. Zelda also, because it's an open world and it has to load all this stuff, right? It's the design and the design of the game that they go for that kind of defines what happens with the frame rate. Because with an open world game, it's a lot harder to maintain 60 when you have to keep all these things loaded in detail for the camera, for someone to look out over a giant overworld to just kind of see the vastness of it. Having that at 60 frames per second is a lot harder than in Mario Odyssey, where they're defined levels, they're small, they're tight, they know what they have to render, and they can put it on the screen, and it works at a higher frame rate there, right? So there's other elements there that kind of factor in, but yeah, I don't know that they will. Well, here's the other elephant in the room as well. A lot of the rumors point to NVIDIA's DLSS technology as being a way in which the Switch can, or the successor of the Switch can, get to the types of resolutions, frame rates that we are looking for from modern console gaming. And if it turns out that Mario Odyssey 2, or whatever the hell that team is working on, is a game that doesn't actually run at 4K, but does with DLSS engaged, right? Like, then you are getting over that hump with Nintendo really not having to change their development cycle at all. Like, they can theoretically make a game just as good looking as Mario Odyssey, running at a lower resolution, 1080p, and then when you play it on the successor, they're like, all right, well, we're just going to automatically put DLSS on to make it run at 4K.
DLSS sounds like fancy checkerboarding to some extent.
Basically,
it's like that extra level that probably incorporates frame rate a bit more, obviously. So yeah, you're right. I think that'll be the magic sauce that can push Odyssey 2 over the line. Right.
And it could even do what you're talking about, right? Of like, well, if the rumors again were like they were showing Breath of the Wild running at 60 4K on this new successor system, and if it is that kind of approach of like, hey, you just make the game as you're making it, and we'll just beef it up. We'll make it easier for you by using this technology to get it there. That's just a win on all sides, really, and it just starts to make you think about the power race, right? Because if we get to this point where NVIDIA's technology and AMD's technology are able to just like make magic out of these things, then, you know, there's no limit to what can be done, right? Then you can have every game run at 60 frames per second at 4K, and regardless of the type of game it is, you can still get that performance because the render resolution, the original resolution they're starting at, is a lot lower, but they're just kind of faking it to get to the place that they need it to be.
Right.
Which, you know, it's not a fix-all magic solution, but it's a way of getting over a lot of these issues that we've had with Switch games, where they come to Switch and we're like, well, it's blurry as hell because it's not powerful enough and it can't handle it.
Yeah.
Deals with a lot of the third-party problems, I think, on Switch, which is
and
good.
DLSS might be something that allows the next PlayStation and Xbox to not be an entire PC tower stacked next to your TV or something.
Right,
like
exactly.
They might be able to, you know, bring it down in size again. Obviously, the Switch successor, Switch 2, is going to be a lot smaller than a PS5, so
right.
You know, it'll have all that tech in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah,
so
very, very good question, Dave, and I'm sure we're going to get back to talking about Switch 2 in the future.
It never ends, not until it's out there, so we shall see.
Tim from Discord says, hey guys, I have another fatherhood related question for you this time. As Bally Jr. and my son, who is about the same age, are still too young to play games properly, my son enjoys taking the controller out of my hands and pressing all the buttons. I'm turning the clock forwards into the future for this question. Fast forward to the year 2030. What games do you hope are being made for our kids? Or perhaps the more interesting version of this question is predict Bally Jr.'s top favorite games in 2030 when he's 8 years old. MBZ, feel free to answer on behalf of Bally Jr. or imagine an MBZ Jr. further down the line. This question was prompted by playing the new Lego Star Wars on Switch and realizing what a perfect game it will be to play with my son someday if he's also into Star Wars. Interested to hear your thoughts and ideas. Your friend, Tim.
It's a good question. Very interested to hear your thoughts on this, Bally, because I think...
Goodness.
So one of the things, talking about Mario a lot on this episode, right, is part of Mario Wonder is that it is a co-op game, right? And, you know, Patrick Klepek has kids, right? And he talks about playing games with his kids all the time. I think something that we don't think about a lot is Nintendo's focus on co-op a lot of the time, where they will just have co-op modes in a lot of their games. You know, Luigi's Mansion 2 has the whole Guigi thing and, like, all these things that right now we're like, whatever, we don't give a shit about that. But it feels like by the time that your son is like old enough to play stuff with you, he's kind of going to be a really important factor with Nintendo games and like getting him into it and teaching him what to do and all that sort of stuff. So like Mario Wonder could be like one of your most anticipated games in the future, a new 2D Mario, because it has multiplayer that you can play with him. He can play as Nabbit and not die, all that sort of stuff. I'm interested what you think about that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, unlike Tim's son, Bally Jr. has no concept of what a video game is or anything because he never sees me gaming because I only game when he's asleep.
Yeah.
So he has no concept of what that massive Xbox Series X is or what the PS5 is beside the TV or even the Switch hiding slightly behind the TV. He has no concept whatsoever. He's never touched one. That'll change, obviously. I think as he gets older, I'll game more around him because at the moment I can't. He would stop me. And often he's watching the TV or doing something else. What games will Bally Jr. play? I think you're onto something, MBZ, with the whole co-op thing and definitely Nintendo, Guigi, Nintendo first party games. They're pretty good at incorporating that. Someone like Vinny's also talked about this a lot on Beastcast on Nextlander, talking about playing with his son. And I think I'm just going to be very open-minded and I'm going to play lots of family-friendly games in front of him. And if he wants to have a go, let him. And I want to
see what
be
he
able,
connects to, basically.
Yeah,
right?
and I want to be able to help him in his way. If he wants me to play and he watches, fine. If he wants to play and I watch, fine. If he's playing and gets frustrated, I want to be able to communicate with him where even if we're playing with one gamepad, we're able to share and identify how I can help and what works best for him. And kind of, it doesn't necessarily have to be co-op, but maybe co-op could help. I don't know, because as you say, like, I think you can be Cappy in Odyssey and one player is Mario. Mario's doing all the hard work and Cappy's just having a good time, basically. I think a similar mode was in like Galaxy, I believe. So maybe that's the first step. What the games industry will look like by 2030.
God, yeah.
Well, I think if you actually go back 8 years, and people have said this, that you know, yes, the graphical fidelity has gotten better, and yes, there's now a lot more online experiences, but the actual meat and potatoes of the types of games that we are playing hasn't really changed in a way. Like Uncharted 1 came out, 2007? You know, and the latest Uncharted is still doing the same thing, just a much prettier way.
High fidelity version.
High fidelity. God of War Ragnarok, like, that's still kind of doing the same thing. Yes, Reboot was a big change, but it's not changing the formula as such in a drastic way. Like, there are games like that exist. Mario Kart's still Mario Kart. Mario's still Mario. Zelda, yes, it's now open world, but, you know, open world games were around way back in like 2004 or 5, right? Assassin's Creed. Like, we're not changing the wheel quite as much as sometimes we think we are in the games industry. So in 8 years' time, I think games will be prettier. I think there'll be more online experiences like there is every year. Fortnite might still be hanging around, but I don't think the industry will look totally unrecognizable. I would place good money that the three big companies will still be Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony. Like, it's an incredibly difficult market to get into, and sometimes to get out of. So in terms of what it looks like, I think it'll look a bit like today, but just a bit shinier.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing to think about, right, is like, obviously you will have an influence on what he's interested in, what he plays, but like there's definitely an outsized influence that what friends are interested in and what they play, right? Because like, think about us, right? We influence each other's tastes and what we were interested in. Obviously our parents didn't care about video games, but like, that was the thing that drove us of like, what are we interested in? Because we would play stuff together. So I imagine that has a really big impact, you know, depending on what people around him at school are playing, that's going to probably influence a lot. And you know, there are these big mega games, right? Minecraft will still probably be massive. Fortnite will still probably be massive in 2030. Does that shape, you know, what the taste is, right? Does that have an effect, you know? And probably you're sitting there being like, oh god, I hope not, right? But like, that might be what happens.
What's
it
called, Roblox?
Roblox, of course, yeah. He could just get deep into the weird Roblox hole, like Jeff Baclar talks about his son, right? And then it's really funny when like they talk about, you know, playing Tears of the Kingdom versus Roblox, and Jeff's like, yeah, fucking Roblox piece of shit. Look at this is a masterpiece versus the garbage you're playing, you know, and like trying to make that distinction.
Yeah, and I definitely would predict that there'll be numbers of games that Bally Jr. will be into that, you're right, are external influence, and I'm probably not going to be into Minecraft even by 2030.
But that's the thing, like, maybe you can get into it, right? Patrick Klepek's talked about how he got into Minecraft through his daughter, right?
And I really respect that. And I think that's a big aim of mine, is to be as open-minded as possible to the types of games he gets into. And once he's gone to bed, I'm going to download that game. I'm going to play it. I'm going to become the expert in Roblox Princess Edition, you know? And like, I'm gonna nail it. Like, definitely. I agree. And I think Patrick's sentiment on that is really good, where there's too much in this industry of, I really like this thing, and my son or daughter must like it too.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm terrified of becoming like that, and I want to try and be as open-minded. And I'm lucky. I'm a big nerd. I like a lot of things. My gamble is that I'm a big nerd who's into so many things that there's going to be at least one or two things that Bally Jr. does like, and that kind of Patrick Klepek sentiment. That's the thing I'm going to maybe divert more of my time to, those two things that he does get into all of a sudden, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What I think would be fun, though, is trying to predict what Nintendo franchises are going to be his favorites. Like, which one? You know, obviously on this show, we're fans of Donkey Kong and Wario. But do you think that he will be into Kirby, Mario, Donkey Kong? Which one do you think he's going to gravitate to? Knowing his personality now, right? Like, what can you extrapolate?
I think, considering that Mario will have 8 films by then and has taken over the world, and the theme park's broken away from Universal, and they've now set up their own Nintendo empire of theme parks by that point, I think Mario will probably have some influence over Bally Jr. So I'd probably put him at number 1 to be, we can play Mario. Plus, the great thing about Mario is you can play Mario Kart, you can play Mario Party, you can play Mario Golf, you can play the Mario 2D Mario game, you can play the 3D Mario game, you can, like, there's loads of ways to incorporate Mario. And I remember being a young boy and being obsessed by certain characters at one time, and the idea of having the same character that goes between different games is fantastic. So I think I think I will feel like a successful father if it is 3D Mario. I will feel like I have failed if it's 2D Mario. but I'm happy with any Mario, and I think that's probably what I'd put my money on.
Okay.
Followed by Mario.
So so let's do an either or. Okay.
Okay.
Will he care more about Fire Emblem or Advance Wars, or neither? You know, like which side does he land on that?
Sell. He's got to be a bit older for one of those, I think.
I know. But I was playing Fire Emblem when I was like 10. All right, I was a bit of a nerd.
True, badly, but you were.
Yeah.
I think that I'd try and get him to Wargroove, you know, like.
There we go. There's the dark secret. Yeah.
I'd be interested what that kind of turn-based strategy looks like by then. Like I was saying, I think it'll probably be more or less the same, just with some new art styles and different things.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that it's unusual for kids to be into that slower paced turn-based thing. I could be talking out my ass here, but
well, it depends, right? If you're the one who plays it around him, and they're still making them, then it could be something that catches interest, because there's totally like, you know, kids get into stuff like watching trains and stuff like that, right? Like there's lots of those little things that can kind of capture the imagination depending on their personality and what they lean towards.
And everything's a phase also. Like he could be into Mario one day and not the next, and then come back to Mario because Mario's got the shiny new game that's come out, or
of course.
I do want them to get into something that's got that sense of adventure. Like it doesn't have to be Zelda, it doesn't have to be, I don't know, what's not an adventure game, but it doesn't be like a Pikmin or something.
Now here's my true prediction, Bally, for your kid, is that he's gonna be like, look, you know, my dad's into some cool games, but Uncle MBZ, he knows where the real shit is at. He's gonna get into Xenoblade hardcore. He's gonna stop playing Persona games. He's gonna get into visual novels. All right, he's gonna become a fucking weeb. You're gonna have a weeb for a kid, Bally, and this is what I hope and I believe is gonna happen. He's gonna become a weeb, and then you're just gonna have to get into anime. It's just gonna have to happen. That's my real dream for this child.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But that might, like the Patrick Lepic thing, that might be the thing that gets me more into those, anime visual novels.
Well, it depends who he makes friends with at school, right? What if his best friend is someone who's a fucking massive weeb and they just get super into anime, right? Like, I think that's a really fun idea, and I think that's my hope for the future. So,
I actually told Caroline about this question beforehand.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And she was like, "He's not going to be able to play games at 8 years old," and I was like, Caroline, he's already using the iPhone and he's 19 months old. Like, we weren't using iPhones at 19 months old. Like, of course he can play games at 8 years old. Are you kidding me? And for those who don't know, like, there's an app called YouTube Kids. It's designed for kids, obviously, and it's a whole designated app that YouTube have made, and you can set it up as a parent, and we've done this for Bally Jr. This makes nappy changing so much smoother. He just something to focus on, just to divert attention. And we can set it to like appropriate videos for 0 to 3-year-olds. And he's not seen anything inappropriate yet. Like, I think they've done a good job of curating the content, and Bally Jr. is able to like. So you've got like, essentially it's just videos along the bottom of ones you've watched recently, and then new ones come up. It's the kiddie algorithm, and it's along the bottom, but he can also see what he's watched before, and he just scrolls along. He holds the phone with one hand and he scrolls along the screen going through the thumbnails with his other hand, and then he'll just tap the one he fancies based on the look of the thumbnail. And he's 19 months old.
Oh my God.
Like, it's actual insanity. And he'll just like play it, and he'll be like, like that, and he'll watch like 10 seconds of it, and then he'll click the next one.
I think about the psychology of thumbnail design a lot as someone who has been doing YouTube for a while, and obviously kind of does a little bit of that stuff with my job with like key art for games and things like that. The idea of trying to think of the psychology of thumbnails for fucking babies is insane. Like, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who have done research into that, but that's wild. And there's like 20 different versions of Baby Shark, and there's like Halloween Baby Shark, there's Christmas Baby my
Shark.
Fucking Lord.
It's just like there's some really good channels where a lot of it is just a sing-along song, and I think for his age that's what's fun, you know. Like it. I tell you what has appeared. Who's the chat show host? Is it Jimmy Kimmel? Is he
I don't know.
But it's like an a cappella Star Wars one, and they actually got all the actors from Star Wars back when The Force Awakens came out.
Okay.
So he likes watching that where they're like,
getting the Star Wars indoctrination in early, I see.
And then the same thing happened. There was a Mario Brothers one. It's like, oh my God, this is Bally Jr.'s first experience of Mario as Jimmy Kimmel a cappella on YouTube Kids. No. What the hell has happened?
Oh no.
And he likes them, but it's just like a little sing along thing, and he doesn't, and he will put the phone down after like 10 minutes. Like it's not something that he's like glued to and addicted to, and I have to keep going. Like he sees the value, and that's nice, but I'm done for now. I'm going to move on to something else, which is good.
It's pretty good, honestly. It's very healthy. So,
but eventually that'll be gaming related. It'll be gaming on iPhones, and then it'll be I want to download this game. I want to. That all is very scary, but one step at a time, and who knows what will be by 2030. Yeah,
absolutely. If I have a future kid, Bally, my biggest fear is like they're just gonna get into sports games, and that's all they care about. They'll be like, "Oh, I'm playing Brian Lara cricket." I'm like, "Yeah, that's cool, I guess."
The new season of FIFA's out. Let's do it.
Exactly. They get really into fucking Madden for some reason. I'm like, why? What
are those like downloadable digital card packs on FIFA that?
Oh, like Ultimate Team.
Yeah, Ultimate. Yeah, got to download Ultimate Team. Let's do it.
Yeah. So
that is a bit terrifying. God,
it is.
The digital collectibles is something I'm terrified of.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely something.
It's the toughest thing as a parent is when to stick, when to twist. And what I mean by that is like, Bally Jr. was really unhappy this evening. He wanted his dummy, but we're trying to do less dummy during the daytime.
Right.
Do you give the dummy and you're back to square one? Or do you resist and you've got a grumpy Bally Jr.? It's like, those are your two options. Neither are good options.
No.
And you have this battle. This is a very toddler battle. But you have that battle multiple times a day, or over a weekend that might happen like 6 times. And it's like,
man.
Geez, this is getting harder. Like it's ramping up. Like the whole sleep thing, he's doing great. The whole eating thing, he's doing great. The walking thing, he's doing great. But like now we are into diplomacy. Like this is. I mean, you're getting towards 2, and the terrible 2s are so named for a reason. I guess. So it's funny. There's a friend of ours whose baby's just like a month older than Bally Jr. But he's a lot more developed, like mentally, and he was having tantrums before any of the other babies we know, and it was very scary because it's like he's just like doing a thing, and then he's just like horizontal on the floor having a tantrum. Oh my God, this is horrendous. But yeah,
well. Hopefully there won't be any gaming related tantrums. That's absolutely going to happen, though, isn't it?
I want to play one more round before bed.
And he'll be like, "But I can't save." And you're like, "Nope, I know exactly how this works." If it auto saved a second ago. This is the benefit of being a gaming parent, right? Is like exactly when it saves, when it doesn't. But it's also good because it gives you the leeway to be like, no, I do know he's not at a save point yet, so let him get to the save point.
It's like, Bally Jr., you are playing Xbox. It has quick resume. Don't give me that bullshit. Okay, go to bed. You can have 5 games on quick resume. I know how it works. Now go to
put into sleep mode whenever you want. It's fine.
Look, Xbox caught on. Every system now has quick resume. Okay, even for online games somehow, and you need to listen to me and go to bed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the drawback, I guess, but
sorted. I think we've devised a very good plan.
I think so.
So I think all sorted. But let's readdress this in 2030.
Yeah. I'll make sure to have bought him a bunch of animation in the meantime, just to slightly nudge that, forward. So
there we go.
Good. Lovely. Well, thanks everyone for listening. That's going to wrap us up for today. But of course, you can write in like these lovely people did. Bally, where can they send those emails to?
Please email ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com.
Fantastic. And do, if you've never written in before, that'd be great. I always like hearing from new people. And you can get written out and read out on the show. We are going to get on out of here, but let's promote some stuff, tell you about some things before we do. You can, of course, support the show if you so wish by heading over to patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife. You can get some bonus episodes, a bunch of other stuff. It's cool, it's fun. Good time. And Bally would like to thank some of our patrons.
Yes, thank you to all our $10 plus tier patrons. They are Zach S, Thomas, Matthew, Albert, Wicked Gamer UK Alan, and Turtle. We hugely appreciate all of your support. And to all of our other patrons, thank you also for your support. We just put out a show. I talked about Forza Motorsport. And
we had a lot of games on that episode, actually.
Forza Motorsport, Solar Ash. MBZ beat Horizon Forbidden West, and then he beat the DLC, which is wild. So definitely you can check out all of the episodes of ThisNintendoLife, all 40 of them for $1. So would highly recommend checking that out.
Absolutely. So go peruse the back catalogue. You can, of course, find us all over the internet. We are on Twitter. Bally, where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91. I'd like to try and post one more F-Zero 99 victory before the end of the year. It's going to be hard, but I'll give it a bash.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me at LordNBZ on there, and you can find the show at TNL Podcast. Go there for updates about everything. Get links to our Discord, get links to our YouTube channel, all those things, all in a lovely place for you. Obviously, you can find the show in various places. We're on Spotify or on Stitcher. You can download us from any podcasting app. Just search for This Nintendo Life, and we'll be right there for you to download. It is all easy to do. You press a button, you subscribe, and then you never have to think about it again. It goes into your podcasting app every 2 weeks. It's lovely, it's delicious, it's great. So do that. And of course, if you are so inclined, please review us on those platforms. Spotify is a good one to do, but also if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review on there. Highly appreciate it. Would be lovely to hear from some people giving us some nice feedback if you so have it. And yeah, I think that is going to pretty much wrap us up, Bally. Yeah, we're getting towards the end of the year.
I can sum up the next month with one phrase.
Okay, go for it.
It's a me, Spider-Man.
It's a me, Spider-Man. In fact, yeah, it's a good day. I always like those days, right, where games come out. Very different styles, but they're on different platforms, but everyone's like, yeah, we're all gonna be playing these games, right? Yeah, it's just happened a few times over history, and this is another one of those that I'm very excited for. So yeah, I did book off a bunch of time to play it all, so I'm hoping to get through as much as I can. But yeah, then I basically have all of December off, so anything that is left over, I'll be gobbling up over the Christmas period. So
Octopath Traveler 2 sitting there.
I got to finish it. Yeah, I got to get at least get a bit more deep into it. I'm like 35 hours in, I think.
Okay.
So, yeah, I need to get back to that. But yeah, I'm still enjoying it. So.
I've got Tears of the Kingdom to get back to.
Oh my goodness, still hanging about. Will we ever do a spoiler cast on Tears of the Kingdom?
Oh, we will.
Find out one day on this show. So, yes. Again, thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back soon, a couple of weeks' time. Until then, have a good one. Bye-bye. The musical interlude used on today's show was Somber Sky from Paranormasight, The 7 Mysteries of Honjo. Copyright Square Enix 2023.